I'd like to call the meeting to order. Can you please rise for the pledge? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. So I'd like to take a moment and introduce our new Board of Finance member who's replacing Mark, who stepped off in the summer, Justin Murphy. Justin, you want to just give us a little background about yourself?
Sure. Justin Murphy. I've been a Madison full-time resident for 5 years, but this is my hometown, so I grew up in Madison and born and raised here, went to Hand High School way back when, graduated in the mid-'80s. And
graduated the year before me.
I've worked in financial services for 20 years and retired 7 years ago, and have been trying to be active and involved in our community since moving back, back in 2014, and welcome the opportunity to contribute to the Board of Finance going forward as hopefully another example of community service, which is certainly an honor to be part of it. So thank you.
Good, thank you. Welcome.
Welcome aboard. Thank you.
Okay, so we did approval of minutes. I need a motion to approve the August 21st minutes.
So moved.
Second. Discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstention? Motion carries. Did you get Jude's abstain?
Abstained, yes.
Chairman's comments, all forgo. Citizen and finance member comments. Any citizen comments?
Gus Horvath of 34 Illsbury Circle. 2 items. I haven't been to those last few meetings, but I've been reading your minutes and things, and I had some questions on a couple of items that came up in your previous meetings, and Stacy was kind enough to give me a half an hour of her time a week or 10 days ago to give me some background on them, and I'd like to comment on them. There's actually 2 things. One is the bond rating and the issue of increasing the unassigned fund balance, and for those of you who've been on the committee for a while know what my feeling is about that. And the other item is on the bonding schedule, tentative one that you've seen bonding for the school projects, and I have some thoughts, a couple of thoughts on that. Stacy gave me a copy of the score board or sheet or whatever it is, if you want to call it. They call it a rating mythology of scoreboard factors for determining bond rating, and taking a look at the major components, the rating factors, the finances, the notching factors, management, debt and pension and stuff. We look pretty good, and most of them obviously because we have a AAA bond rating, so they're not going to give this to us. And what I've been thinking about is tying in with the bonding for the schools and maybe some other projects like the Academy Street building and things like that. I would suggest you look at these components and talk it over with your bonding counsel and with Stacy, and which ones are the most important, and see which ones of these you want to do something about protecting, so that the subsets of AAAs and the subsets of AAs remain relatively stable. I'm not quite sure exactly how you would do that, but I'm just giving you an overview as to take a look at the components here and see which ones are strong, and do the best you can in keeping them strong. For example, we're very strong on the debt per capita issue. It doesn't say per capita, but that's essentially what it means. And we will not be very strong in debt per capita in 5, 6, 8 years. So what can we do ahead of time to protect that? And if one of the things is that we increase the unfunded fund balance to protect that portion of the rating, I guess that's where we'll have to go, whether I like it or not. You know, and that doesn't make, whether I like it or not really doesn't make any difference, okay? But the issue there is how do we go about it? And maybe instead of jumping from the 10% policy you have now to a 15%, could we grow into it? Maybe change your policy this year or next year to 12%. A couple of years later, 13 or 14% or something. But don't wipe out the entire availability of the unfunded fund balance just to jump from 10% to 15% the week after next. Exaggeration, but you get the point?
Yeah.
Okay. And moving on to the bonding schedule, which Stacy didn't give you a copy of, the bonding schedule is something that I had visualized a long time ago, and I talked to you guys about it, and I sent you some information which was very, very sketchy.
Mm-hmm.
And the concept seems to work that you initially, and it's logical because I've done it when I was first elected. And we had no director of finance. I was the director of finance. Taking the issuing of notes for as long as you can, as long as IRS lets you do it without taxing you for the interest on it, that you do that and then bond, and then take out more notes, and then bond and notes and bond. And I don't know exactly what that schedule would be. Stacy has put together one that looks pretty good, except it does bump about 10% at one point. So there's some refining that should be done, and I would urge you to stay below that 10%. And you're, you know, those of you who know about this are nodding yes, and I'm not preaching to the choir. So those are my comments on
Thank
those
you.
two things, and I just wish you well.
Thank you, Gus, I appreciate it. Any other public? Catherine?
Catherine Hunter, 31 Scotland Avenue, speaking on behalf of Save Academy. I think the board knows that Save Academy is a grassroots organization that was created to oppose high-density development of Academy along our green. I have a question this evening for the board that is related to process and strategy. And I want to thank you for helping us understand this. Save Academy is going to jump into action again pretty soon in an effort to bring public awareness to the Academy Community Center project, and perhaps even to the candidates' stand on the community center. I understand that the sitting committee now will be presenting to you this evening has submitted this community center to the CIP. And it's my understanding, but please correct me if I'm wrong, that once submitted to the CIP, it goes to the CIP committee. And at some point, both your board and the Board of Selectmen have the discretion to advance this to the budget for inclusion in next year's vote on the budget. And that would be more or less a placeholder for this capital budget pending the outcome of a referendum. Do I have that right?
So the only piece is, what happens is it goes, everything gets submitted to Stacy's office.
Yep.
Stacy puts the book together with all the projects. It then goes to the first selectman, then the Board of Selectmen. They push it forward to CIP, and that's when that's when the Board of Finance and Board of Selectmen get involved. So, so it's almost right, it's just that little piece that it doesn't go directly to the CIP.
So it's the order of events?
Correct, that would be the process.
Does the Board of Finance have, and again, I'm sorry if I'm not phrasing this correctly, equal weight with the Board of Selectmen as to what comes out of the CIP and goes into the budget?
So in terms of the planning, the selectmen do the planning, but in terms of the financial implications to the town, what the town can afford, that comes from us. So we have been trying to work collaboratively to try to, you know, with all these projects, the school projects, you know, even the library in the past, and then for Academy. So my thought would be that the selectmen in good faith, and I think Al, I saw Al somewhere, in good faith, put this committee together. So it would be my assumption that we would take the recommendation of the committee and then move it to the public, and then the public would make the decision. But the process is to go through the CIP, and that's where we collect everything together.
Okay, so just so that I know I've got this right, this board, are you comfortable, are you in a position to say that this board would recommend advancing the community center capital project to the budget?
So our piece of it is if we can financially afford it. We have not seen the presentation, but my assumption is that the selectmen put this committee together, they've approved it, it's gone to the CIP has approved it, which is an arm of us. Then my assumption is it would go to the public for a vote. Fair?
Yeah, I would just add that I think the power of the Board of Finance is a little greater than that. This is a really sort of iterative process, and it does have to initiate with the Board of Selectmen, which advance it to the CIP. There are equal membership from the 3 boards, including the Board of Ed. Each of us has 2 votes on the CIP. The recommendation that comes out of the CIP then goes back to the Board of Selectmen as part of the normal budget process. They get first dibs at it. It then comes here, and I think as a matter of law and of our regulation, we then have the power ultimately to do what we want. We can reduce the amount, we can increase it, and we have done both.
So the financial aspect of it is our responsibility.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments from the public? Good? Okay. So we have 2 presentations tonight. The Ad hoc Academy Committee has presented to the Board of Selectmen, and they had asked to come in front of us to give a similar presentation to this board, and then we will also have Youth and Family Services as a follow-up to the restructuring that they did last year before the budget cycle. So we'll begin with I'll turn it over to Bill. We'll begin with the Ad hoc Academy Committee.
Hi, thank you all. Bill Stableford, I'm the chair of the Academy School Community Center Committee. And there are other members of the committee here: Catherine Flynn Donovan, Dick Pissarro, Roz Kama, John Michael Parker is missing. And the first time we were in existence, we had 6 members, including Gus Horvath, so we're well represented here tonight. Because of what we just heard, yes, our committee has submitted an application to the CIP program via the Beach and Rec Department as the town department. And we thought it was very important for us to come before your board and share with you some of the financial aspects of this project. We submitted our most recent report to the Board of Selectmen on July 30, and that was a fairly extensive and long presentation. We've decided to cut it down to basics tonight in the interest of time. For a brief historical perspective, our committee was initially created by the Board of Selectmen in February. Prior to that, in 2018, there was an Academy Guidance Committee. They were tasked to come up with options for use of the building. They came up with 7, 3 commercial, 4 public. The Board of Selectmen last fall took those options and contracted with a professional polling group, the Great Blue Survey. And last December, Great Blue initiated a systematic phone survey and an online survey. The results of that found that 59% of the respondents preferred a community center over any of the other options. And the next preferred option was, I think, in the teens, in the percentages. So the Board of Selectmen created us in early February. Our tasks were to come up with a conceptual design for renovating the community center renovating the Academy building into a community center. And we worked very closely with Colliers International and with QA&M Architects. The result of that process was finalized in a report to the Board of Selectmen on April 8th. That report is in written form that looks like this. And if you would like a copy of this, Lauren Rhines can get it for you. She can also make available an online copy and a digital copy. Lest you be put off by the length of this, most of it is appendices. If you want to get the short version, I recommend you read the executive summary. And by all means, at the very end of the appendices are the architectural renderings. And these renderings show in real diagrams what this building could be transferred into. And most people look at the architectural renderings and they're both amazed and impressed and indeed fascinated by what this building could be turned into. So once our April 8th report was submitted, the Board of Selectmen decided to leave us in place and assigned us 3 new tasks. Confirm the estimate for the renovation cost, which is well known, 13.9 million, 14 million for round numbers. We were asked to come up with potential cost offsets. How could the renovation cost possibly be reduced? We were asked to develop estimates for operational expenses, staffing, maintenance, utilities, and to look for estimates of the revenue streams that could possibly offset the operational expenses. And we've done just that. This is the presentation we made to the Board of Selectmen. We're going to truncate it considerably so that in the interest of time. And Catherine will advance the slides. And I'll just give you a little indication. Okay, that was our phase 1. That was completed on April 8th. Thank you. That's the west view of the building, and the next one shows, go ahead, Catherine. That shows the architectural rendering of what it could look like with an entranceway on the west and a 3-story elevator for ADA compliance.
Can we maybe kill some of the lights?
Yeah, let's
just
turn out some of the lights.
Put the lights
Over here?
behind you.
Okay, good idea.
Great,
Thank you, Ben. Yeah. Okay. So those were our charges in the second phase. We met 14 times between April 8th and July 30th. Had 2 public information sessions, multiple discussions with consultants, including Stacy Nobitz, Deb Millardo, Woody Weiss, Bill McMahon, and facilities. And I'll tell you, we got up to the State Historic Preservation Office and the Connecticut Historic Trust. Next, please. Okay, next, we'll keep going here. We also toured the Academy building with a circuit rider from the Connecticut Trust for Historic Preservation. Those are experts who come down and consult with people who are interested in renovating buildings and give us guidelines on very specific elements of historic preservation and restoration. So we know that the estimated cost will be 13.9 million. Okay, next one, please. All right, this is fairly detailed information. You can look it up online, and I'm just going to go through it quickly for you folks. At the State Historic Preservation Office, SHPO, there are 2 major tax credits available for historic preservation. The first is the state one from SHPO itself. That's 25% of hard construction costs. Out of the 14 million, only 8.5 million are hard construction costs. So there's a potential after the fact tax credit could be returned to the town of Madison in the amount of $2.125 million. And what that requires to complete that application is the work of an architect, an engineer, and for the A2 site survey, and an architectural historian, which is a new profession to us. Architectural historians are consultants who work with renovation projects to to guide the process and complete the application to SHPO standards. The federal tax credit is 20%. That's actually administered by the National Park Service. The application is submitted through SHPO. It's very complicated, and there's a lot of legal requirements there. The town has to create an LLC with a for-profit corporation. That for-profit corporation gets the tax credit up front, and then over a period of 5 years, sends a check every 5 years, once every 5 years, once every year for 5 years back to the town. Next one, please. You'll see here a list of SHPO grant programs. And these are grants where we can apply for and receive dollars from the state for a variety of different aspects of the renovation. And again, I'll leave the details to you if you'd like to look at it later. Next one, please. Still SHPO. Then DECD, Department of Economic and Community Development, has a $400,000 potential brownfield remediation grant. Interestingly, the man who operates that office lives in Madison. I talked to him the other day. So that could be for hazmat removal. There's also a community development block grant that could apply up to $1 million. Next one, please. Then a STEEP, Small Town Economic Assistance Program, that was referred to us by Noreen Kokaruta. And then finally, Eversource Energy Efficiency Rebates. And then there are also other private organizations that we could appeal to. So where does that leave us? Should this project go to referendum and pass, the town could then submit applications for any or all of these tax credits and grants. I don't like to throw around a magic number and say, oh, well, we could get X number of dollars off, because we don't know if that will happen. I have to emphasize, every one of these are potential and possible. But there could be significant savings and bring the long-term cost to the town down considerably. Okay, next one, please. So, if the costs were at $14 million on a median assessed $350,000 home, the increase in annual taxes would be $110 per year. If the costs were brought down to $10 million, then the increase in annual taxes for a $350,000 assessed home would be $77 per year. Next, please. Okay, I'm going to turn it over to Dick Pissarro. We met with Stacy and Deb Millardo and worked out some projections for operational costs and also revenue streams. So, Dick, if you would take over.
Before I get into the numbers, let me point out a few things to you that I think are necessary when you consider the numbers. I think probably the most important among those is the vision of a community center. If people know anything about community centers, if you visited any of the community centers along the shoreline, then you obviously come away with a rather traditional idea of what a community center is. But what we did was we looked at 13 community centers in southern Connecticut. We visited 7 of them. 9 of them were converted schools into community centers. So we were trying to see how other community centers function, what the differences were among the community centers. And what you find out is, of course, that there is a whole array of community centers. A few facts about them: almost every community along the shoreline has a community center, except us. The most recent is Branford. Branford has a beautiful community center which is going to open in 2 or 3 weeks, and I recommend strongly that you go over and look at that. It is a model community center combined with a senior center on 2 levels. It's down behind the church on the green there. Looking at these community centers, we realized that we had to have a flexible vision of a community center. That is not one with a rigid structure, not one where all the rooms are designated for a particular use, but a community center in which we could maybe have business conferences at one time, we might have a teens meeting at another time. Now also, the arts are we went through this a long time ago, as you know, in Madison, but the arts are a very important component of many of these community centers. And the arts component ranges everything from bringing in outside bands, having musicals, having dances, as I understand Guilford is about to do in theirs, having business conferences. So I want you to think, and I'm taking a lot of time, I know, but I think it's important that you understand when we talk about the numbers here, the numbers didn't materialize from nothing. They came from the experience of the town offices, but also the visits and the information we gained. We know what the budgets are of these community centers. We know what the expenses are, we know what the revenues are, we know how big the staff is. And so when we look at Academy and we come up with a plan, it's based on this kind of experience. Now, also, I'm sure you've seen it, but when Bill talked about the illustrations, the architectural illustrations, if you haven't seen the model that is out here, I suggest that you take a look at the document we have with it, which is, it's a tour of the building. So if you look at that model, read the tour, and it will take you into the new entrance, through the elevator, throughout the building, show you the changes, and it'll give you, that model is built from the architectural drawings. So it's to scale, and it will give you a good idea if you walk into the building, what you're going to see. All right, now for some of the numbers. And I'll have to go pretty fast through this. But again, these numbers have not come out of thin air. This is the operation and maintenance costs, which everyone has said, not everyone, but a lot of people are saying, well, we can have a community center for $14 million, but then it's going to cost us a fortune to operate it, to maintain it. Well, if you look at this, you can see that, and this comes from Deb Millardo's office, you can see that the total operation and maintenance cost would be $567,250. These are the additions we would need to the Beach and Rec staff to run that building. The most important is an event coordinator to complement the staff, and this person would, as in almost all community centers, would have the imagination and the energy to bring into the community center different kinds of programs. So it would involve a new community center, 2 custodians, a person to maintain the grounds, and then the cost of maintenance, utilities, and this was generally done by taking 3 times the senior center's numbers. This was sort of a rough estimate. Now, the one thing about this is you can see this is for a 35-hour week. 5 days, 35 hours. A lot of community centers run weekends. So you'd have to take a multiple of maybe 1.5 to this number if you're going to increase the staff and operation and maintenance to extend it for a full week. Okay, next. Now, there are some potential reductions in energy, electrical, heating, hot water, and then the total costs. If we use a photovoltaic system, if we use a ground source heat pump system, solar hot water panels, with an installation of $750,000 to $900,000, the break-even point would be 7 to 10 years on that, and this would reduce the energy costs by 40 to 50% in the building. This is something that's happening in Madison, and we'd like to see it also happen This is not, however, in the budget. This would have to be voted on by the Board of Selectmen after it's approved. Next. Well, here are just a few slides from other community centers, and we'll just flip right through them quickly. You can see how the gym is used. We have a beautiful theater there. We've seen these theaters used for everything from tiny kids running around in their peanuts type things in the morning. All right, next. We have a kitchen. These kitchens are used in a number of different ways. Usually they don't have chefs. People who want a wedding will bring in their own food, that sort of thing. So our conversion of our kitchen does not have to be into a professional kitchen. It has to be a functional kitchen. Next. Teen dances. We've talked to teens in town, and we had a really nice awakening in terms of what the teens would like. We thought that the teens were going to want something, a place where they play pool and that sort of thing. What they really wanted was a place where they could mix with professionals, a more adult kind of thing. If they're interested in art, they'd like to mix with art professionals. Next. All right, now for the revenue. Beach and Rec, we asked them after they appeared before our committee, and they gave us a matrix which showed that with their planning, they could fill every room almost every hour of the day. Right? We have 16 rooms, and it could be done. Now, if you do that, it's almost, it's hard to say this, but this would come to a total of $8,670 a day income. That's using the gym, using the theater, everything. But after going to different community centers, we realized that there has to be a space of time between the uses of rooms. You have to clean them, you have to set them up, and so on. So more than likely, a number of half this would then be realistic. But the use that they've proposed is very realistic. Okay, next. All right, projected revenue then, 12 hours a day without weekends, 100% occupancy, over $2 million of income. The expenses, $850 $875. You subtract those and you get a potential net revenue of $1.3 million. If we assume a 50% usage instead of 100% occupancy, then that number is $675. Important thing is, it is enough to pay for the operation and maintenance of the building. In other words, run properly, you can pay for the operation and maintenance with that revenue. Okay, next. This just shows how the rooms would be filled. Next. This shows the community centers that we visited. Next. And this shows them by name. Next. All right, let's keep going. All right. This is a senior center school conversion in Middletown. A beautiful little old Catholic school that's been converted into a senior center. Next. This is what the lobby looks like, and this is what our lobby would look like in our new community center. You walk in, there'd be an elevator there, and this is minimal renovation. We're not talking about major structural renovation. Next. You can see that it's minimal renovation throughout the rest of the building. And this was a $5 million project. And it was funded by the kinds of grants that Bill has talked about. So they, not only are those grants real, they have been used and are being used. Next. This is another one of the community centers. Next. It shows the kind of recreational rooms that you can have in them. Next. This is the gym. Next. All right, now financing. I just have a few examples and then I'll stop. If you look at the Middletown Senior Center, the financing for that $5.5 million, the Connecticut tax credit, $1 million, state historic tax, historic restoration fund, $200,000, The Connecticut Historic Trust, $5,000. So here's an actual example of where you start with a $5.5 million cost, and you can reduce that cost by these grants in the same way they did. Okay, next. Now, this is another one. This is the old North End Community Center in Burlington, Vermont. The only reason I put this in because it has also the federal tax credits, which are a long process to get, but that was a $2.2 million grant, along with the other tax money, and it shows that if you structure your operation right, these monies are not only available, you're likely to get them. Next. All right, next. Like the operation and maintenance, just as a comparison, I'll stop with this one. A good comparison is Guilford and Madison. As I mentioned before, most of these community centers are run by Beach and Rec or Parks and Rec departments, as is Guilford, run by the Parks and Rec department. They have 13 rooms, we have 16 rooms. Their rooms are smaller. They have 9 members on their staff. We have 6, and we would add probably 5, as you saw in that one slide, including the event coordinator. The budgets are comparable, 1.6 million, 1.5 million. The building maintenance, not that different, and the utilities are pretty close. So you can look at Guilford in many ways as a financial comparison to what we would have with Academy.
Excuse me, how much revenue does the Guilford Community Center generate?
That's a good point. The revenue of the community centers depends entirely upon the community's revenue policy. Some community centers give away most of the time, free, as does Guilford. So their net revenue is only about $30,000. But if you look at the other ones, like Litchfield, their revenue is $600,000. Supplemented, we have looked into the Americans for the Arts. If you look at, for example, the Kate in Old Saybrook, they bring in 40,000 people a year. Now, if you want people downtown, we're not going to build another Kate, but we have a theater there that can bring in a lot of people.
Did you find any other community centers at all across the state generating more than $2 million of revenue?
I didn't find any that generated $2 million. The most was $600,000.
Okay, thank you.
But it is enough because their expenses are $500 and some thousand, though they actually have a profit of about $100,000 a year. And that's completely private. Theirs is completely private, run by donations. Any other questions? Yes.
I had a question. You mentioned that we're the only town without a community center, and that was also mentioned in an article. There's been a lot of articles on it from Branford to Saybrook. Can you just clarify that? Because I didn't know that that was the case, particularly heading east.
Yes, I can. Old Saybrook has a converted school into a community center. Westbrook has the converted school, which houses the police department, senior center, and the community center. Guilford, I've already shown you, it houses not only the community center, but also the senior center. Clinton has a new building that is mainly a community center. Branford is going to be an upstairs senior center, a downstairs community center. And probably the best comparison in terms of the structure of the building is the Elmwood Community Center. That has a senior center on the second floor, and the basement and the first floor is the community center, which is just, the building looks just like Academy. Same period of time.
But where's Clinton's community center? I didn't think they had one.
It's north of town.
It's on Route 81 in the Indian something, Indian River section.
It's a tiny thing, though, relative, comparatively.
The building's small.
Building's small.
Yeah, but they have the fields and recreational things around the building.
Roger, did you want to add?
No, the only other piece of this is the unintended consequence of the well-being that comes to the town. So how you put a price on that. And if you look at the number of dollars per household, many of the people who came to our community events talked about the need to have these kinds of facilities. They seek them elsewhere. There's tremendous Guilford envy. A lot of folks use the Guilford Community Center. And so this would just allow us to keep people in town, potentially draw people as a piece of tourism or economic development. And we're about, as a committee, to start to take a look at the economic impact of many of these events, bringing people into town and increasing revenue generation for merchants. So, you know, there are many things yet to sort of layer on top of it. This is sort of the black and white spreadsheet, but, you know, we'd like to think that, you know, folks who choose to live in Madison choose to live well, and we think that they can certainly be enriched with these kinds of programs.
I remember when the senior center was put up, they were building that as a senior center / community center, so.
Which one is that?
The senior center, the brand new senior center that we built.
And they have proposed, we've interviewed all of the nonprofits and many of the folks in town, and what they came to tell us is they are so overbooked that they're actually leasing space from Guilford to continue some of their programs. So it's been amazingly successful that, you know, this would sort of just overflow. The other thing to consider that we've done is we've talked to the folks in the historic district with the green and all of the programs that are both at the Deacon John Graves House, Charlotte Evans, the Senior Center. You know, all of that activity sort of puts extension on our town. We sort of bookend with the renovation of the library. The community center would sort of be the gem in that wonderful section of town. Charlotte Everett's is starting to build with their grant a wonderful tour package of town, and so it just makes sense that we take advantage of this historic preservation, the funds that come with it, and sort of tie it to the legacy of Daniel Hand in our community.
I think, Omar?
Yes, thank you. Don't mean to interject. Phil Mormon, First and Citizen. Ken, to your point, I don't think that's correct, because when the senior center, as we now know it, was proposed, two things happened, somewhat related. Number one, I believe that the seniors in town, remember they were in that sort of caboose thing where the ambulance garage is now. They did not want to be part of the senior center. Al remembers, they said, we don't want to have our senior center overrun by all these younger people or whoever. So they were adamant that they wanted to keep a separate senior center.
But I understand, but when you were selling it to the people at, you know, trying to get people to approve it, the pitch went out that this is not only a senior center, but it could also be used as a community center. That's how it was sold to the town. So I understand what you're saying.
It was in its early days.
Understand, but I'm just saying, so that's how it was sold.
Yeah. I would just want to say, because I've
I was on the
been,
planning and building committee for that meeting, and it seems like people have forgotten that the original structure was to be 2,000 square feet larger than it was, so it could be a community center, and the voters turned that down.
Yes, that's the other point I
We
want to
reduced the scope of the project and sent it back for the second time, and that's the only way it got approved. So that building that is sitting there is not the original proposal of the building committee. It's about 2,000 square feet smaller.
right, there were a number of compromises. That's the story of Madison, a number of compromises that were made.
That's right.
To get it done. And as we heard from the senior center director just a few months ago, I guess it was more than that, it was in the late winter, they're beyond capacity. They were marketing their space to the community as much as they could, but it's now so overused that they're hurting for space. When the school facilities group interviewed them, they were very eager to talk about how they might find space in renovated schools, and I'm sure that the community center will get a lot of spillover use from the senior center.
And Ken, if you
Wait,
really want to go
but,
back.
I mean, guys, just let me get the board members in. I promise I'll come back to you. I promise.
Wouldn't it be relevant then to show the senior center's economics as a comparison? They obviously have all their space, available for rent, so wouldn't that be a good?
Their
barometer?
economics is really pretty simple. It's about $450,000 a year, and probably they don't make more than $1,000, $1,200 a year profit in it.
Stacy, is that your?
Yeah, I mean, there's written policies on how we should charge fees and what markup for overhead costs are in there. And again, that's in the regulations and the policies.
Is that 25%?
It's 25% for each program in the Beach and Rock.
Now, did you guys consider that when,
We did
Scott, I guess
indeed.
I looked at you, is
Projections.
that part of it? Okay.
Yes, we consulted
Okay.
very closely with Scott and Linda LaSance. We also invited Austin Hall and have spoke with him extensively. He can envision, given the fact that the senior center is now operating at capacity, is fully scheduled all day, every day, he can envision making use of a potential community center in Academy, and he mentioned some very specific types of programs that the seniors are asking for and are not able to have available in the senior center.
I was just saying, we have economics detailed on towns that we don't have any involvement in. It would seem to make sense. We obviously know the numbers at our own senior center. Why don't we show those in detail? That would be very helpful. That might prove your point.
The only reason we didn't is because we're dealing with a community center, and senior centers are a different creature. You're comparing apples and oranges. And for example, the senior center has as you all know, it has a professional kitchen and chef, and they offer meals regularly. And the community center is not set up to do. Other community centers are.
No, but the rooms available to rent would likely be rented by the similar types of groups that are.
The public is not allowed to use the kitchen at the senior center. That would be very different in a community center. Our renovated commercial kitchen would be available for public use. In the senior center, it's hands-off, it's only professional staff.
So, just if you want, Stacey, we know that you can run the numbers for us, and we can see it, and we can, just to repeat, so you can see it, know.
Just invite Austin Hall in, I'm
Right.
sure he'll
Yeah.
give you the rundown.
Again,
So
it's
we-
under our current regulations.
Right, of the 25%, we have to cover the.
And that's
Overhead
for
costs.
the programming, but
Correct.
the use of the facilities by Madison nonprofits is free or $10 or something.
Yes.
Right.
Guilford is free to all nonprofits. I've wound up with a number of organizations using the Guilford Community Center extensively over the last 2 or 3 years. It is constantly churning with activity, day and night. That place is full, generating
Yeah.
traffic of all kinds, foot traffic and car traffic. And
Agreed, and I think you guys have done a very good job of explaining that and showing us that. And we'll just have Stacy for our next meeting, if you could pull that number, that would be great. Go ahead.
I don't know if we have this statistic up here, but somewhere through many of our interviews, someone had done an analysis of all of the meeting rooms available in Madison, including those coming up with the new
Right,
library,
yeah.
and we were still at a deficit.
Yeah, but that may be helpful also to look at that with the new library and the rental space in the library. So Stacy, if you can find that for us also,
I
that
think
would be
that's
helpful.
useful.
Any other questions?
Any other questions?
Gus,
Okay,
did you wanna say
a
that?
brief summary handout for each of you. Judith, if you're kind enough to just pass these down. That's it. Thank you, Chris. Yes. Thank you, folks.
Thank you.
Appreciate your time
Thank
and
you very much.
attention.
Thank you.
All right, next we have discussion with Youth and Family Services. Scott, would you like to come up?
Thank you very much.
And just to preface, Bennett and I meet with Scott on a regular basis. We felt last year it was incredibly helpful to have Youth and Family Services come in prior to the budget process to understand what they're doing, their plans. So this is kind of like an update from what we have done in the past and what they have done from their budget time last year. So I think it's just important to keep these conversations going and not have them at the 11th hour while we're trying to do the budget.
Well, let me start by saying thank you for the time. This is not going to be the kind of presentation I made last year. I think I was here for about an hour. You all remember that, right? That was a good one. It was a good meeting, informative. I'm glad. That's right. That's how good to not an hour this time. Definitely. No, I hear you on that one. So what you have is a very brief overview. So I'll talk. I'm going to sort of follow this, and then you're more than welcome to take a look at it later. If you have other questions, please let me know. And my update, I'm going to hit on a couple of things. I might be the only person in here not to really specifically talk about dollar amounts and lots of money. There are things I'm going to highlight that are going to that may be issues that may come up in terms of our needs and may have a dollar amount attached to them at some point. But I don't have anything specific to ask you.
Could I just ask you one, since we have a new board member, could you just briefly go over, the restructuring and how you did not, that would be great.
Yep, that's going to be, I'll
Perfect.
hit on that
Thank you.
into the presentation. Thank you. So just to kind of hit the overview of my department, we are Youth and Family Services. We're now 10.66 equivalent full-time employees. We also have a couple of contractual workers. We have interns as well as volunteers. We do have an organization to try to attach that to the back if you want to take a look at that at some point. You're more than welcome. We do have a formal 12-member advisory board, and important to know that we do have a documented strategic plan that we developed, and we're coming to the end of that period by next year. We are responsible to provide programs and services as a part of, so the town has a defined health district, and my department is responsible for the services that are provided to youth and family under, to meet those requirements. We are also defined by state statute as the Youth Service Bureau, the YSB, for Madison, and that allows us to pull in grants through, actually now, it used to be Department of Education, now is CSDM. And we are part of the Connecticut Youth Service Association, and that's comprised of 104 YSBs all the way across the state, and we obviously work around the grant funding and advocate for certain issues at the state level. I happen to be on the executive committee of the CYSA, and I'm the vice president right now. Go me. We break down into 3 subdivisions. We have our prevention programs, our clinical services, and what we refer to now as community support. Community support is social services, as well as it encompasses our Drug and Alcohol Coalition. That came out of our reorganization last year. It's important for you to know that we use more of a systems approach. So all of our programs, we sort of design and intend to have them to be meeting a purpose. So when we're thinking about prevention programs, we are thinking about specific issues that we want to address, and we want to do as much as we can on the prevention side to keep problems from happening with our youth, as well as we need intervention services like clinical services. So for people that are struggling with mental health issues or dealing with an issue in their family, we also have services that will help them through that. So it's thinking very broadly all the way across the community and thinking of things in terms of the system and in terms of helping. Does that make sense to everybody? All right, as much as it will at this time. So important to point out too, we work very hard applying for grants, bringing in grants wherever we can. We've also developed our clinical services around a behavioral health model that takes in third-party insurance. We've worked very hard to develop our system to maximize that part of it. That allows families to use their insurance instead of having to pay out of pocket. It also allows us to collect a fee at a more substantial rate than we would if we were just self-pay. Last year, we had, between our primary grants and our clinical revenue, we brought in $133,000, and that was up 16% from the year before. So a couple of highlights going back last year, as Jean brought up, we underwent a very comprehensive staffing reorganization last year. We had several people that were retiring. We were also coming to the end of a large federal grant that subsidized and funded our Drug and Alcohol Coalition. So as we approached that time, we knew we wanted to keep our coalition together. We knew we had a number of people that were leaving, and we decided to kind of take a very comprehensive look and really just sort of like mad scientists, play with all the pieces and then look at the costs over time. And with the help of Stacy and Kristen and a bunch of people in finance, some guidance from Board of Finance members, a lot of help from Deb Lardo, a lot of help from Tom, if he's still here, he's not, Tom Vanish. We created a basically reorganizing these positions. We pitched it through the process last year and we were able to get it approved. So the organizational chart at the back is what we have now. We worked ourselves through that transition last year. Thanks to that structure, the bumps were very minimal. Where we had problems, it was we did that reorganization based on our agency needs. We didn't necessarily do it around specific people, which then meant we then had to fit, we had to get people into those spots. And we were lucky. We had a number of internal people that stayed with us, took on new roles, and we're happy to. And then we had a couple that we had to go out and find people for.
In your mind, do you think that the restructuring was a success?
I do.
That's great.
Yeah, very, very pleased. And I'm very grateful because it was really a huge team effort.
You were the architect behind it, though.
It was a lot of work, but definitely worth it.
Yeah, great. Nice job.
Appreciate that. And to know that last year was just an incredibly taxing year. So as we were undergoing all of these transitions, there was there was very little time in which, whether it was a program that we're running all the time or a new issue, there was never a dull day. It had a feel around the office like there was never enough that we could do. We didn't have enough counselors to meet the need for the demand coming in. People were waiting for counseling time. We had the schools bringing up, we interested in different programs, and there were issues that were coming out of the community that I'll get into a little bit later. So it was a very, very busy year. And with our involvement at the state level, again, thinking systems, we're worried about substance abuse, we're worried about the trends in that area. There were several bills that would have proposed legalizing marijuana, and between myself and our coalition, we were very adamant and very much a part of the effort to oppose the legalization of marijuana at the state level, which meant we were going to the Capitol a couple of times and involved with different groups with that effort. If you want me to speak with that, to that in more detail, I'm happy to, but we'll leave it there for now. So the areas where I would just like for you to kind of hear in terms of where our needs and maybe some points of emphasis going into this year and maybe going forward. So our space issues, I touched on this last year, but to bring it up again, we are in 10 School Street. It's a small building. We have a few offices in Memorial Town Hall that we have for counseling offices. It's not set up well. We have counselors that are meeting with people in a public building. The confidentiality there is sometimes questioned by people who go and use that space or come in to get services. We have safety concerns about that sometimes. Our waiting room doubles as our meeting room and our staff room. We don't have another large space. We have to borrow space from other buildings. We have space issues. So when I say that we're squeezed and separated, that's what that means. This isn't new. This is something my department has talked about, I think, for the better part of the last 15 years. I have notes from my meeting with Fillmore when he was first selectman. Do you remember when we came to talk to you about our space issue?
Several times. I'm trying to forget it.
But you can't, right? I And I've had other follow-up conversations with the first selectman about this, so I know that this is tricky to talk about compromises. I mean, all I can do is represent the fact that my department needs more space. And since I'm asked often, well, what is it exactly that you want? I try to be succinct about this. But in essence, what we're looking for is a sufficient amount of space that's really designed around our purposes. We need office space to do counseling. We need spaces that are flexible enough that could accommodate small or even larger group programs.
So Scott, I just have a question on that. So then
Yes.
what would you be suggesting to the board? So are you looking, would your wish be to move to another location, or are you looking to add on to your existing space? In a perfect world, what would you want?
So in a perfect world, to be somewhere close to where we are now, because being downtown does help. We provide social services. We do have a number of people who are closer to the downtown, will use some form of public transportation or walk. We also have teenagers, as you may know, sometimes that are downtown, and when we get walk-ins and kids that are looking for help, it's better for them to access us that way. So ideally, we're in a space that's downtown. The question about renovating our building, that's come up. There's actually been drawings where we're at 10 School Street, or right next to the Academy Street School. I think there's been a little bit of pushback because it's a fairly historic building and what that might cost or look like. So there's been a number of things. So I wind up just sort of in this space. We need to be a part of the conversation when it comes to space. We're good team players. We've been working with this for a long time, and I'm just going to keep coming up and bringing this up until it gets somehow addressed.
Have you talked to anybody about leveraging the academy space for that purpose?
I wouldn't say leveraging.
Because think about it, right? If you did a property swap, right, to generate some type of revenue off of the space that you had to to cover the costs associated with you.
Yeah.
Transitioning into a newer building. I'm not coming up with solutions, but
No, I
I just think we need to start thinking about how
We
we're
have
going to cover costs for these types
We have
of build-outs.
$187,000 designated for us in the CIP, which came out of a different project associated to adding to our space. But here's the thing with putting us in what's conceived as the community center now. So we have people who come in and that utilize social services. And there are people that are sometimes shy to come into our building. They're in pretty rough shape. And so, how would they feel going into that building? How would people feel about having people come in? We have people utilizing our counseling services, so how would they feel coming into a more public setting to go to our building to get counseling? So those would be things I would want to be able to walk through. There are different ways to address those things. If there was a lot of interest in including us in the community center, but those things would be important to address.
Yeah, for sure.
Can I just ask a question, and I'm not an expert in this
Go ahead,
area at all, but I wonder, is it ever, do you ever feel like people are shy about coming into your building because they know where they're going, and maybe would it possibly be almost better because they'd be coming into a building and people wouldn't know why they're coming?
So it's a great question. We run a lot of different programs out of our building, so we will often say to people, if you're shy about coming in for counseling, we have other programs, so that you might be coming in for peer advocate interview, or you might be coming in to be a volunteer, so that's what we tell them. And so that's probably how we would address if people were shy to come into to a community center to access us. I think the difficult part maybe might be more of the social service clientele that we serve, or people, for lack of a better way of describing it, in rougher shape. So our staffing, I wanted to speak on this. We did a major reorganization last year, and I've had conversations over time with Deb, and we have positions that went for years that were not really looked at very well. A lot of this has been addressed more recently, in particular since Deb became the HR director and the town went through the salary scaling, that big process they went through a few years ago. So we are at a point now where we have some positions that I would like over time to address, and to me it's more like fine tuning. The one that that's come up this year, we have what we refer to as a parent support counselor position. It's 29 hours a week, so it's a part-time position just below the full-time threshold. It's been a position that we've had a hard time recruiting and retaining for the last couple of years. So I have gone to Deb for this year and asked if we can revise that and potentially even expand the hours. We're having discussions about that, so there's nothing concrete. I'm just telling you what I'm asking for. And we have some ideas of how we would revise that position and make more use. So if we were able to make it a full-time position, we would utilize it more clinically, which means then we could, because we need therapy time, but also that's reimbursable time. Hours that we have for our clinicians, anything that's billable, we average anywhere from $50 to $55 for that hour. So it's one where we can show that we're getting some money back for the town for the extra time. And we want to, I want to just keep having a plan maybe over the next 4 or 5 years where we're looking at positions that still need some attention in my department. Not a lot of money, but still things we want to map out over time. And always try to offset the cost with anything we can do with revenue and grants. Programmatically, I want to point out for this year, the trend has been, and this is, it's important for you to hear this, so the school is declining in enrollment, so I think that there's this general feeling that we don't have to worry as much about youth and families and things like that. What we've been finding over the last couple of years consistently is that the needs are actually increasing. The enrollment may be going down, but we're not any less busy. And I'll talk about some of the trends that are happening for youth. So that's, if there's an idea that we're going to, not have to spend as much in certain ways, just be cognizant of that. We do our high school survey every 2 years. It's a very comprehensive survey. We get a lot of data out of that. It's about substance abuse and behaviors and opinions and things like that. So we will have that this year. So keep an eye out for that. There's always, we do community presentations once we have that data, and we do a lot of our planning around that data. A lot of our challenges right now have to do with applying our resources in a very thoughtful and purposeful way, because there's just no end to what people are coming to us with and concerns. And I'll highlight 2 things that came up last year. One is that we were approached by a parent in town who talked about the fact that we've had a number of recent high school grads who have had untimely deaths. So we have kids that have graduated in the classes of like 2012 and up, where you had 1 or 2 each class, either because of potentially an overdose or a mental health issue or something like that. So, and we've been approached by other parents as well that have expressed the same concern. And I'm telling you that I think that we have an issue that young adults are facing. So kids in their 20s, for different reasons, are showing up with more mental health issues, in some cases substance abuse issues, and there is no structure that's designed to work with them or identify those kids. So that is something we are sort of looking at, because it is very closely connected to what we do. So I'll leave that there. If you want me to speak more, you can certainly ask me.
Have you looked at any of the Fed money available, for the grant money that they're putting out for the substance abuse
Like
programs?
opioids?
Yeah.
But we have. For what we're able to do right now, we're not eligible for a lot of that money, but it is something that we are looking at. We don't have a larger per population opioid issue that we can, and there are other people.
Oh, is that what it's based on?
Well, yes. Yeah, a lot of that money is based on opioids.
No, I know that, but was it based on the problem within the location, and that's who got the money type of a thing? Like you had to prove that you have this type of an issue in order to get access to that cash?
In brief, yes.
Okay.
For the ones that I'm aware of, yes.
Okay.
We have anecdotal data. We have cases that we know where families have been struggling with domestic violence issues. Housing has been an issue in some of those cases. We know that Guilford runs some programming that's a little bit more, I think, comprehensive than what we offer. So we're looking at that issue. I've been in touch with the police, and I'm trying to get some data just to understand more of the scope before we take more steps in that area. So trends, and these are things that are probably pretty talked about and and the media and whatnot, but we are, there's certainly an impact of technology development at a very rapid pace. Trends for unhealthy use of the internet and social media, so you hear about sexting issues, bullying, online gaming, and online porn. That's contributing to some of the issues that we're seeing in our youth. I'm sure everyone's hearing about vaping almost every day now. And we were warning about this years ago, and here it is. Very strong feelings about the vaping industry and where we are. It's just a freaking shame. There's a continuing and a constant evolution around developing nicotine as well as marijuana products. Those are going to be issues now and as well as going forward. And the targeting of really the young adult population for alcohol, nicotine, marijuana. A lot of legal industries are really targeting youth. And the issue for me is that we know that we actually don't stop developing totally, particularly the brain development doesn't end until like you're around 25 years old. And so the legal age being 21, there's a group of young adults now. And the marijuana that's being marketed in the states where it's legal is not the marijuana of even 10, 20 years ago. Better living through chemistry. Like they're doing a really great job of intensifying the THC and developing products specifically to get a particular buzz or high. If you want, look at Massachusetts and what they're selling in the products and how they're being marketed. And very concerning because the research on the impact of marijuana THC on the developing brain is pretty scary. And sort of this undercurrent of angst that I think, so we live in the post 9/11, post Sandy Hook world where kids are exposed to hearing and actually on a fairly frequent basis even now of mass shootings and things of that nature. And lots of things about college debt, some really sort of icky cultural dynamics that we're all living in with it. There's political conflict and things that maybe flare up. You see them flare up every once in a while within the schools where there's conflict that comes up. So this is what's going on. So that's the bad part. The good part, we've got a pretty good, strong community. We have a lot going for us. We have a lot of assets, a very strong sports community, a growing, strong arts community. The thing that I think that maybe we miss is that we don't connect them all as well as maybe we could. We do in pockets. There are people who belong to a church community and then also coach and they're also part of this. So in pockets we have people that are connecting. But I don't know that we always, on a municipal community level, do as much work that we should to connect those pieces. And that's some of what we're hoping to address as we go into next year. So just to wrap up here, we are looking on a few levels. So these really at the bottom are points of emphasis, and it's to put time and attention towards the community leadership. We have what we're referring to as an assets initiative. That grew out of those meetings with those parents last year. We want to make sure that we're doing as much as we can for youth, and we want to start involving the different segments and the community leaders that are present here. So in essence, myself, the first selectman, the superintendent, and a few other people that want to be a part of this. We're hoping this year to start reaching out to individual groups within the town, start pulling in some feedback about what's going on, what do they need, how can we help, that kind of thing. We want to continue to work with our youth to empower them to be their best self-advocates. We have a lot of programs that are just geared around kids learning how to help themselves, kids learning how to help other kids. That's almost half of our prevention programs are just built just for that purpose. We want to engage as much as we can, parents and adults, to inform and support. That's the continuing work of our Drug and Alcohol Coalition, the work of our board. As much as we can get out into the community, we're going to do that. And continue to respond to the needs, have mental health services that are available and affordable and accessible. Continue to support the schools and all the town departments I'll be going to the police department and do a presentation to their shifts, make sure that they're aware of all of our programs. We've done that before. They love it when I come up with them. We bring them stuff.
You didn't bring us anything.
I got you this. So I'll leave it there. Any questions you may have?
Okay, it's always good.
Yeah.
It's always informative to hear from you, and it's great that you take the time out of your day to come speak with us. It definitely helps us kind of, as we're making decisions, to better understand how to allocate funds, and so I appreciate it.
And then coming forward too and talking about, as you said, there's no set plan yet, but these are the things that you're looking at. I think that's important that we know as they come along, we're prepared for them, we have constant dialogue about it, so that's very helpful, and I appreciate that.
Thank you.
I would like to just do whatever we can as a board to keep the issue of your space in people's minds. It's been an issue for ever. Yeah, and we're at a point now where we really have to address it. And obviously, if Academy comes online, whether you go there or other people go there, it opens up a lot of possibilities. I think we have to take a look at all the property in that area and sort of figure out what the priority uses are. I'm not sure we're organized in a way to prioritize the needs of town programs that serve critical functions. And so I think there's an opportunity to do that coming up real soon.
I understand that there was a plan proposed at the Board of Ed meeting last night. Did that come through CIP?
It will, yeah. It goes to Stacy's office, she collects them,
Okay.
goes to Tom, and then it goes to Board of Selectmen, CIP, and back to us and the Selectmen.
So a lot of moving pieces, I suppose.
There is, and from the beginning, our hope was all of these were going to come together at a point so that the taxpayers know everything that's out there and then can make choices, educated choices with their vote.
That's exactly what's going to happen, Gene.
That's what I
Stay
think.
positive.
That's what I believe. I'll put it together myself and go door to door. Thanks so
Yeah,
much.
thank you. Thanks for you all.
Thank you.
Thank you. Discuss and take action to approve the request from the Beach and Recreation Department to purchase a used John Deere tractor for building and grounds. Funds will come from the Plant and Equipment Fund. You want a tractor?
I want a tractor.
Hey Scott, I've heard this before, want me to do it?
No. In my backup material, it kind of explains everything. The highest capacity tractor that we have in our inventory is not strong enough to continue lifting our deep time machine, cedar when loaded, or our top dresser. So we have researched the web, and we came up with it's a 2000 John Deere, and it's higher capacity, three-point hitch, will lift everything we need. And it has, it's a 2000, and it has 2,700 hours on it, so that's less than 142 hours a year. We've examined it. It's in really good shape. And this funding will come out of our equipment replacement fund, which is funded by our program account. And certainly athletic fields are an attribute to that program. This will help give us three tractors in our arsenal to seed, fertilize, beach clean, and take care of all the grounds that we have.
So Scott, I see in here that I understand that you're wanting the new one. It has things that it can do that your other ones don't.
Yep.
But you don't want to get rid of the one that you have.
Yeah, we have two other tractors, which are all used daily. Our smallest one came from Bower Park, and that we utilize at Bower, but we also utilize it pretty much during the summer on an every other day basis for beach cleaning. It's strong enough and it does strong enough and small enough to take care of the beach cleaner. So we're grooming the beaches. The one that we were using for our deep time in Cedar, when the guys were going up on the trailer, it was overloaded. That's why we were going up. That's a 4210, and this one is a 5210. So it's got more weight and more towing capacity. So I think it's a good. We have 3 things that we're doing, but we're also doing trees now for as far as cleanup goes. So we have to have that lifting capacity.
Will you save any money from that, outsourcing tree work?
Well, we do outsource high stuff.
Yeah.
Due to the fact that we don't have a bucket.
No, I understand, but you'd said that you do some tree work with this. Typically, if you didn't have this, would you have to pay someone else to do it?
We would have to be using our middle grade
Okay.
tractor, which we probably still will. This is mainly intended to deep tine seed
Yeah, okay.
and haul the top dresser.
So Scott, to that point, do you foresee a reduction in overtime or a reduction in labor hours? So I'm just trying to understand, from a value.
Yeah, efficiencies.
Yeah,
Are we getting any efficiencies like it?
Are we expanding the pie as far as cost, or is it reducing other labor that?
I think it'll help streamline what we're doing, because right now, if we have, the smaller John Deere can't do field work.
Mhm.
Okay, so we're completely relying on the middle one.
Mhm.
If we only have that, we can only do one task.
Mhm.
With this additional tractor, we can be out in different venues and getting twice the amount of work done.
So there is some efficiencies.
Yeah, definitely.
So you'll be able, you'll be able to do more for the town with greater capacity, so you're not going to necessarily reduce costs.
With less overtime.
Okay, yeah, so you'll just be able to do
So
more.
there
Sure.
will be
Okay.
reduced costs.
Yeah.
Sure. And remember, that this money that we're requesting is in an account that we have put away with our programs to purchase
Mhm.
equipment, that the bigger equipment that we need for programs, such as sailboats.
Mhm.
We bought the showmobile, our concert trailer, after saving up. That's where the money came from. It wasn't a capital outlay of over $100,000 to buy a new concert trailer.
Just to clarify, several years ago, we created a new fund so that Beach and Rec keeps a portion of the revenue it generates through its programming. The rest goes back to the town.
And that's what they're using
Correct.
That's
as
what
a
they
kitty
want
to
to use
pay.
this for. So it's really, it's their money, but
Yeah,
we
yeah.
have to, we
Have to
retain the
approve it.
right to
Sure.
approve the expenditures.
Do you foresee any other big expenses coming down the pike? that-
We have a schedule.
Yeah.
We may, as we have on the schedule, as sailboats age for sailing, we may end up needing a new trainer.
But nothing that's gonna squeeze you at the end of this year?
Oh, no, not at the end of this year, no.
Okay, all right.
Good?
Yep.
Good.
All righty.
Want a motion?
Yep.
I move approval of the expenditure for Beach and Rec for the tractor.
Second. Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstention, motion carries. Discuss and take action to approve a resolution to enter into a lease purchase agreement with Government Capital Corporation for the purpose of financing a 2024 F-550 for the Beach and Rec Department. This is part of a capital improvement program. Why don't we move it in second and then discuss it, because we skipped that
So
step.
moved.
Second,
Second.
discussion. Stacy, if you could just, Justin had asked me, just in general before, just a quick, why we lease and not buy, and what that looks like.
Yeah, so we were buying up to maybe 3 or 4 years ago, and then we were buying one piece of equipment at a time. And it was taking us a while to actually build up our fleet, and everything was getting older. So 3 years ago, maybe, through CIP, we started a leasing program where we have all of our vehicles, all of our highway equipment, everything in a program where we rate a replacement schedule, basically. And this truck came up. Basically, it's in CIP, it's in the 5-year program. Board of Selectmen agreed to release the funds, and this is simply agreeing to the lease agreement. So the Board of Selectmen, Board of Finance has to agree per policy and regulation to commit to further funds for any kind of lease agreement. So that's why it's on the agenda tonight. We did go out for 3 different price quotes. This price quote was the lowest interest rate. We got a second one at 6.7%, I believe. And then 2 other leasing companies would not even entertain this option because it was too low. One wouldn't accept one under 100,000. Another leasing company was under $1 million. So this was the best. We've worked with them before. They understand the municipal world as far as titles and registration, because we don't have to go through the DMV as a typical business or anybody else would. So we've worked with this company before and it's been successful. It's part of the program and we're still trying to fine tune the program, but we have made improvements. And Bennett could probably speak on behalf of CIP as far as where we've come from then and now, but right now this was the only one that's up and coming.
Yeah, I apologize, obviously I'm new to this, but I will admit I'm coming at it from kind of an aversion to debt unless absolutely necessary. So I see the agenda, I'm like, great, they're leasing a car on my first day, so.
So just to back up.
It seems expensive.
Just to back up, this is a capital lease, so we will own it at the end of the lease.
No, I
So
was.
it's not an operating lease where we have to return it.
No, my comment was just, it seems expensive, but in terms of
The
interest.
debt cost seems expensive?
Yeah.
At $375?
Plus 1,200 fees, I mean, it's.
Overall, when we ran the numbers with the one other respondent who was interested, the payment would have been just under $12,000 a year. This is a little bit over $11,000 a year, and we had budgeted at $14,500. So this is under what we were expecting, and it was definitely lower than the only other one that was interested in our business.
Yeah,
No,
I
just
see the
with the
fees
fee.
number. What is the fee number for?
It's just built into the interest rate. They throw that out, and then we throw that in and recalculate the interest.
Which turns into what? What's that?
Which turns into the 11,006
Oh, that's a
a year.
payment. No, I just
Yep.
wonder what your
Yep.
effective interest rate
So,
is with the 1,200.
and some people throw the fees in there, some people don't, so we try to translate it and convert it so we
Yeah,
can
so you're
compare
comparing
apples to apples,
right.
exactly.
So is the 375 including the 1,200, or
Yes.
is that?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yes.
okay, then
Yes.
So, yes,
I was adding that.
right.
Yes,
They
so
just
don't-
it's all inclusive,
So that's already
that is
baked
our
in, so
annual
that's nice.
payment, and it's within what we have accounted for
In my
within the
opinion,
fund.
that's cheap money.
Yeah, no, that is, but not 5.5 or 6.
Correct,
Yeah.
not today's price.
Just a little bit of history. It's only been, I think, 3 years when we've had the town vehicles. We started with cars and light trucks, and then we moved the heavy equipment on. But the police department actually started it, I think, 5 years ago.
At
At
least.
least
yeah.
5, because we were getting into a jam.
That's the right thing to do.
And then it gets really expensive when you got to replace a whole lot of vehicles at once. And
Sure.
you got to come up with the cash. And I think the town decided that it made sense to allow a more rational accumulation of money through the CIP. So we know we've got a schedule. There's now also a requirement that all equipment has to be professionally examined, outside of examined and check it for useful life and so forth before the decision is made. But I think it served us well. It's certainly given us control over the spending. It's known, it's budgeted,
Predictable.
predictable.
We've come a long way, and we have the schedule and a plan, replacement cycle. And the good news is when we lease, we don't have to return it at the end of the lease. It's our vehicle, and if we take care of it, then hopefully it'll last many years.
Good. All in favor?
Thank you.
All in favor?
Yes, yeah, aye.
Aye.
Okay. Motion passes. Discuss to take action to approve a special appropriation request in the amount of $147,000 from the Public Works and Engineering Department to fund the Texas Walkway Lighting Project. Any motion?
I'll make a motion.
Second?
I'll second it.
Discussion. Go ahead.
Can we get a presentation? Oh, good.
Yeah, as I think you're aware, the town was awarded a transit-oriented development grant in the amount of $400,000.
Right.
And the project entailed rehabilitation of the Texas Walkway. And one of the primary goals of that was to improve pedestrian access from the train station on Bradley Road to the downtown center. So the project went out to bid, and there were 4 qualified bids that were received from qualified contractors, and each of the bids were over the $400,000 grant amount. So the work entails some rehabilitation to the superstructure of the walkway, new decking, a new railing system, and lighting along the walkway, basically replacing the existing lights that have not been working for many years. The Office of Policy Management agreed to allow the contract to be awarded to the lowest bidder, minus the walkway lighting. The OPM stated that the rehabilitation of the walkway basically meets the intent of the transit-oriented development grant, with some limitations in that without the lighting, the walkway usefulness is somewhat limited for conveying pedestrians from the train station to the downtown center, at certain times at night. And so we are, so that they stated they would like to see the lighting, but we're not, OPM stated they would like to see the lighting, but not making that a condition of approval of the grant, but did strongly suggest and alluded to, not getting the lighting as part of this project, potentially impacting seeking this TOD grant in the future. So, they feel it's important. I agree. I think lighting, replacing the existing lighting is important. So that's why I'm here tonight, is to request a special appropriation for the $147,000 for the lighting component for this 1,000-foot long walkway. That's about where we're
That's it.
So there was, and I'd just like to mention, you may be aware that there was a public hearing scheduled for Monday, and one citizen came to the meeting, so it didn't have the 75 required for the quorum. And so that's where we're at today.
It was pending tonight, the
Yeah.
public hearing.
Yes.
Questions?
When did you get the bids back?
Oh, Jesus, I can tell you right now.
I remember we talked about this extensively, right, at one point?
Yeah, and during the bid process.
Right, and didn't you think at the time that the 400K was gonna cover? Because I remember talking
Yes.
about this, and the
Yeah.
whole goal was that, the money that we got was gonna cover the work for the,
Yes, so we did, and we had a quality-based selection process for selecting a consulting engineer to design the project. The project did include, the rehabilitation of the walkway and the lighting. The bids came in, over 400,000. It was.
Is it bare bones kind of a thing? Is there any way to, reduce the request of the bid so that it's, a little bit, I don't know if you're using, Douglas fir, and, you could use.
No, so there was actually bid alternates in the bid documents that
had some enhancements for, like I think it's red cedar as opposed to pressure treated wood. And even just with the base bid, which is, you know, pressure treated wood, it was still
So
over.
you went with the base bid?
Yeah, it was still over the 400,000. And so looking at the, you know, the items in the construction documents, there's really nothing that could be eliminated and still have it be a viable rehabilitation project, other than lighting. You know, the walkway would still function without the lighting.
Stacy, where would these funds come from if we decide
It
to
would be
move
fund undesignated.
undesignated fund balance?
So the bids that you're talking, and I'm sorry, I missed the first couple of minutes, I had to step out. The bids that you solicited were for the walkway and the lighting?
Yes.
And they came in at over 400, they came in more than 140,000 over 400?
Right, the low bidder was, I think, 539,000 with the lighting. So with the elimination of the lighting, it brings their contract price down to 391,000. So it's worked within the grant.
Does it make any sense to separate those two projects and go with someone who just specializes in lighting, that they might do that cheaper?
I don't believe it does. So this was all, you know, this all went through this rigorous state contracting process, and you know, that the contractors had to be qualified to meet this type of work. And so you know, I don't know. I think it was a good competitive bid. The bid range was, see this, got my glasses here. So the bids ranged from the low of 539,000 to a high of 604,000. So I think that they're relatively close. So I don't know that separating this and doing this at this lighting project at some time in the future would yield a lower price. No.
For a different kind of lighting, what kind of lighting is this?
The lighting is,
That's what I missed. I'm
so
sorry.
it's step lighting that's at 6 foot spacing, and it was, you know, the
LED?
The LED lighting, so it's you know, it's efficient lighting, and it's you know, sturdy, tamper resistant, durable lighting that is appropriate for a coastal environment. So that was the goal of the design consultant in speccing these lights. So I'm told they're decent lighting, but it's not the, you know, it's not the top end of lighting. For example, there's lighting that LED lights, you know, to similar nature of these lights, but have the ability to change colors by season and things like that. So it's not, the lighting is not, I don't think the highest end lighting. It's just appropriate lighting for this use. So the existing light, if you go look at the existing lighting today, it's looks fairly flimsy, and none of it is working now. So.
You have a picture of what this would look
Wait,
like?
can I just get?
Yeah, go ahead. So you're not getting 4 new bids, this is the portion of the original bids that was for the lighting. And now after the grant, we're just basically adding it back from the same
Yes,
bidders.
that's
So
correct.
You're gonna do all the work at the same time.
Right,
Yeah.
right. So the low bidder is the low bidder whether the lights were eliminated or not.
Right.
You know.
I'd just also like to add to it, the subcontractor that the general contractor's hiring is also A&S Electric, who's well-known throughout Madison, meaning the facilities department uses them for a lot of the schools projects. For the Strong Center field houses, they hooked up the primary power from the transformer that lights both field houses currently. So they satisfy the state's contract requirements. So it also makes us feel better knowing that the subcontractors we know is a vetted well-known electrical contractor that does plenty of work in town here. So that definitely, when we saw that come across our desk, it definitely,
Is the general contractor doing any of the work?
yes. So basically, and that's another thing, part of the reason why you only get 4 bids or a small amount of bids on state projects like this is there's a huge contract compliance part that with all these contract requirements, you're narrowing your pool down to, in the state, only a handful of people that could do this type of work and also meet the state's requirements. And one of the requirements is that, and this is mandated by the state's Form 816, their standard specifications, is that the contract has to perform at least 50% of the work. So they're meeting that requirement as well as their other MBE, WBE requirements. And that's sort of, that was reviewed by John and I throughout the selection process.
Good.
Yeah, I just want to add, this is a long-standing CIP project. We've gotten a lot of state money. This is actually connected to the downtown project. This was designed to link the train station with the downtown. We had to do the Texas Walkway because it's a death trap. I didn't mean that.
Take that back.
We had to do it anyway, but we also got sidewalk improvements at the train station. I don't think we got enough money for all of that, but we've been piecing it together. The state's given us multiple grants under this program, and
Yeah,
it
just
seemed
remember it was-
prudent to, we want to finish this package, you know, and it will then give us the whole downtown and the connection. It's the transit-oriented development type grant. And
No, I get it, I just thought,
Yeah, no.
I remember we were talking about it was gonna be within the nut, and now it's
we all
kinda-
hope so. And-
Right.
And none of the work that's been done, you know, has been with our money so far, right? We've been able to use the state's money pretty effectively.
And let's use it while they have it.
Well, we have.
Any other questions, comments?
Is it, you have something that you can show what it looks like or something? Is it gonna be nice, you know, or not just gonna be functional?
In my office, there's a detail for it, but it's basically a little,
Flashlights.
No,
Yeah.
not the lights, the walkway. Is it gonna be like
Yes.
a, you know, a nice
yeah,
kind
so
of
it has, instead of the wooden balusters that
Yeah.
get kicked out and
Yeah,
every
right,
3 or
just
4 are
awful,
missing or
right,
broken,
right.
it's gonna have stainless steel cables that run horizontally
Oh, nice.
through, you know, new 6x6 posts, so.
We'll have a meeting down there.
Yeah, I think it'll be, very
At
nice.
night with the lights.
It's gonna say, Kenny, it's gonna say, take the train and walk down here
Right.
to the community
All we need
center
now are some
and
shops.
spend your money.
Okay, and we're gonna take the money from the undesignated fund balance, right?
Yes.
I just wanted to make one comment, because I was just listening to everybody. I'm just, and again, it just maybe more just for future concerns when we, you know, we're pitching an idea that it's a grant and the grant's gonna cover all the costs. And then, you know, we get put in a very uncomfortable position here, you know, in a 20-minute presentation to then have to make a decision as to approve, you know, $147,000. So I guess maybe it's more like a cautionary kind of statement in that, you know, there has to be some degree of, or I guess, what's the degree of accountability in these types of projects when the expectation is X and then the result is X plus 50%, or close to 50%, or maybe a little less than that, but it's just a significant increase from what our understanding was. So I guess my question to you would be, or maybe to anybody in the room for that matter, is how, you know, what should be the process on these moving forward? So we do not, you know, find ourselves, you know, having to invest $150,000 when our original understanding was that it was going to be provided fully under the grant. So more of a statement maybe than a question, but just that's kind of where I'm just struggling with.
We kind of had a procedure last year where if there was an overrun, unless it were urgent or some sort of emergency situation, we would refer it back to the CIP. It's not going to make the bids go away, but it would at least give the CIP time to look more closely to see what the harm would be of peeling off the lighting and sticking it in next year's budget, exploring options.
Yeah.
We could give it more than 20 minutes. So I think that's probably not a bad idea. Where we have the time to do so, I think that makes more sense than trying to make a decision on the fly here.
Hey, Kevin, if I could just allude to that question. Another thing is too, and with some of these grants, like for this one, for example, specifically, John and I didn't write the grant, and we weren't involved when we went after the grant.
Mm-hmm.
So when then we're given the opportunity to do this project, and you read the scope of work,
Yeah.
my question is, who agreed to do this amount of work for $400,000? Because
Did you have the ability to ask for more up front and we just didn't do it?
so we
did.
We did. We got-
But I think you're getting to maybe to the crux of maybe my concern is that, because I want to be clear, I'm not holding you two responsible in any way, and you're now executing on what the town, had agreed to move forward on. But to your point, and I think you're kind of expressing my concern, is that we agree to do, this project with the understanding it's going to cost X dollars, and then it's like X plus.
I agree with you. I think before these grants are sought, I think due
Yeah.
diligence should be done on what
Well,
we're
that's-
agreeing
Yeah,
to.
because now our hands kind of forced in a way. And that's
Sure,
kind of how I feel right now.
I don't disagree with you.
So you don't get involved in the grant process at all?
It was prior, it was staff, and it was 1.5 million from what I remember from in the application.
Yeah.
So they offered us 400,000, and we took it.
Because it was tied in with this whole project,
Yeah, gotcha.
and they chunked it out for us.
But what was the basis of the original estimate? I guess that's where,
Like,
I wasn't involved.
well, I mean, could you not justify the 1.5 and that's why you didn't get it?
I can't
Yeah,
explain
no, I hear
where
you.
they
I
came
hear
you. I
up
think
with the
it's because
application
it's-
versus the.
It's a
So,
political decision about how much they
It's
give
what?
So-
any given town.
right, so I think there's two things on the table. I agree with Bennett and, started from Kevin, that we should throw these things back to CIP and vet them a little bit more. We're now in this position where it's a little original because you were not involved in the grant writing of this, it was prior staff. And the question becomes, do we do this tonight? And then moving forward, we go back to what we've tried to implement, whereas if there's changes, it goes back through the CIP. So that really becomes the question.
And again, we don't accept any grant, we could apply for whatever. We don't accept it until it goes through both the Board of Selectmen
Right.
and Board of Finance, knowing what our matching is and what the scope is on that grant.
Right.
But who would have thought that the
Would be
bids
that.
would have came in so far?
I mean, the reality with these grants is, if you think about the downtown, phase one of the downtown,
1.8.
1.8 or whatever it was, that was like 11 years worth of state grants. I mean, it was crazy.
It was, I think it was 5 separate grants.
Yeah, and so.
And this is it, this is the last piece of that?
No, I don't think
Move
so.
on.
Well, to that point, I think if that's the answer, then maybe it should then go for further discussion. And again, we're in CIP, or to CIP as.
So the question,
gonna hold it up
it's
quite
gonna
a
hold
while
up because it
because,
doesn't
yeah,
meet
you're
until.
gonna have to have
We're
a
9
whole
months
new
away.
CIP.
Yeah, it's 9 months. So again.
I mean, we could do it.
Well, I guess it puts us in a very troubling position. I don't know the way to say it, because we're responsible, as fiduciaries of the town's finances, and we find ourselves in positions time and time again where the expectation is X, and then we get put in a very difficult position. And that's why, I'm not trying to hold up, and I only have one vote anyway. This project. So I'm not trying to hold up this project,
So
but at the same
right.
time, I just feel uncomfortable voting on it.
So I think,
So I made us abstain.
right, and I think that, I think there has to be, in fairness to everyone, I think we have to make a statement, send out an email saying, this is where we are gonna draw the line, and this is moving forward, this is how we are gonna handle situations like this. I hesitate to hold this off. CIP doesn't have a meeting scheduled. We actually have some membership issues right now that we have to fix. So I'm not sure when to do it, but it would be my hope that we could do this and then give everybody a very clear statement so that it wouldn't even come to us. It would have to go back to the CIP. That would be my thought. Again, I'm one vote too, so I'm not gonna.
Can I just ask one more question related to that? So, I mean, I understand grants, you apply for whatever amount and that covers more than just this, and they can say yes, no, or whatever amount, but that's not really the crux of my question is, what was the base, forget the grant, what was the basis for the original estimate? That was so far off, that's really where the accountability, I think, lies. No one can control how much money the state offers you, but usually initial estimates on something that's not that complicated, decking, are not that far off. So do we know what the basis was of the original estimate?
It was prior staff.
So that's just a black box and no one knows.
I think we may also have not had a full picture of what the Tungus project was.
The scope.
The degree of degradation of the structure, I think, was not fully understood. This has been kicking around for years.
Was it completely new, or you're reusing
Yeah,
some
so
of
I
the
mean, at the
structure?
time, like you're saying, Bennett, at the time of application for the grant and the scope is written, this is, like I said, I'm kind of inheriting this and picking this up, now, but it's before the walkway is really looked at and evaluated and analyzed in depth. So, we hire a consultant to take a look at the walkway and determine what kind of structural upgrades have to be done, as well as the decking and the railing.
Right.
So,
Don't we have town
That wasn't
engineers that can
done.
do that stuff?
No.
And they also
They're
have,
structural engineers.
So you're saying that wasn't done, or we don't know the results of that,
No,
information?
what I'm saying is that the estimate is based on very preliminary information. I assume when they decided $400,000 was enough for rehabbing the walkway and putting the lighting in there. So that's why I think that's why, there were bid alternates, basically upgrades to the wood. Hoping that, worst case scenario is the bids would come back in and we just can't accept any of the bid alternates for these wood upgrades, and it would have to stick with the base bid. Unfortunately.
Is the lighting a safety
was-
issue?
Well, I think
At nighttime,
yes, right?
Yeah, so I guess that's my next question. How far can we should we push this off, knowing it is potentially a safety issue? I mean, those
Yeah,
are just
this might not
questions.
be the right issue to stake the flag in the ground.
That's my point. I think we do
However,
stake
it is an issue.
Correct.
And it happens a lot.
Correct.
And I'm dreading any potential, budget creep from any other projects
Right.
going on in the town right now. When
Right.
they come back and say, oh, we're over budget,
And I
just-
think we can put this stake in the sand, and we can make it very clear moving forward after this, that this is not gonna happen. We haven't had that conversation yet, so, and these are special circumstances, this is not your grant, it was not something that you had put forward. So I totally agree that we can't keep doing this, but is this the one to say, we're not doing it? If that lights at
If
night.
not this one, then when, I guess.
Well, I think right now, that's it, we're done. I think we're gonna send, but we have to notify people in the town that this is no longer going to be. And I think once we notify people, I'm in the clear saying no.
Yeah.
Because we've said it, we've made it public, we've sent you, documentation, we're not doing this anymore. And then it's not a matter, it's not even gonna get on the agenda.
And we are
It better
committed
not.
to
I
the
think
project
correct.
because we accepted the grant.
Yeah.
Do we want to accept the grant, do the project, and leave the lighting out?
Yeah, well, that's why we're kind of, we're stuck.
Right.
We're stuck, right?
We're stuck.
And so.
Kevin, I agree with you totally on this, and I think every one of us up here hates it when these special appropriations come through. It's like, why didn't we know about this? Why is there a need for this? And the more and more we have them, the worse we feel.
Yeah.
And we do have to put our foot down sometime, but I agree with Eugene. I don't think this is the one to do it on. I think this is the one to make the mark
Right.
I think that for
As
a
long as
couple
the
of
mark is
reasons.
made.
And
We're
it has
on
to
the
be- and she
scorecard.
can make a mark, so we're gonna do that.
I'll make
Line
mine.
in the sand.
But,
Right.
yeah, with this one, we've got the grant money, we want to use that grant money, especially while we can.
Okay.
We've told people, I mean, this project has been out there for years. I don't want to put it off another 9 months, just to have it come back and people saying, why can't we ever finish anything in this town?
Right.
We're gonna get grief for approving the special appropriation, but we'd also get grief for not getting a
It's a
damn
double-edged sword,
project
That's the
finished.
problem, it's a double-edged sword, and you're damned if you do, damned if you don't. I think that's the problem that, at least, I think we're
Yeah.
concerned
Well, I
with.
certainly don't want a walkway out there without lights on.
No,
We don't
and-
want to face that kind of liability and that kind of risk. So I think this is the one where you send out what you need to send out, and God help the person who comes in asking for a
It's
special
not getting on the
appropriation.
agenda.
So when they're doing the decking, can they also go and take the telephone poles out?
Unfortunately, no. It's a whole different issue.
That's extra.
It's a whole different issue.
All right, so I will commit to getting everyone, before I send it out, an email explaining our position, and then we'll send a blast email out of our position, and no longer will these things be on the agenda.
Okay.
All right?
Except for emergencies, obviously.
Yes,
Yes.
absolutely.
Contingency.
Goes without saying.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions?
I will abstain.
Motion carries.
I like your man of principle.
He is a man of principle. Okay,
I
what?
did.
You did, you
I
made a motion.
I didn't make a motion.
To discuss it, to discuss it. Review CIP committee process.
Yeah.
Thank you.
No, I don't.
Have a good
I can
night.
talk
Bye,
quickly
thanks very
about
much.
it.
No problem.
We are currently, my office is still working on coming up with a recommendation to the CIP. The regulation states that it needs to be submitted to CIP by October 15th. So we have been waiting patiently for some big items to come through. Last night, the Board of Ed voted on the school facility project, so I'm going to incorporate that. And then Kristen, myself, and the office will work on getting the document together to move forward to the first selectman and/or the Board of Selectmen and move it forward to the CIP committee by October 15th per the regulation. So this is a unique year. Every 2 years, it's an election year. So things are a little later than it was last year. So the thought was that we get everything to the existing CIP by October 15th. And then we can hopefully, after the election, appoint this new CIP members. Your meeting is November 13th. Immediately after that appointment, the Board of Selectmen would be before that, and the Board of Ed would be before that. Immediately after November 13th, we would have our first CIP meeting and move things forward very quickly. Our hopes are to have the first public hearing of all the recommendations that move forward from the Board of Selectmen before Thanksgiving or the week after Thanksgiving. And then it's going to be bam, bam, bam. We're going to really just dive in and move things quickly. So it is unique because of the election and the members could change. But that was my thought, unless you all wanted to move forward sooner.
No.
Okay. Because if that's the case, then we have to talk to the current existing committee
It won't
and then
work.
redo it again after the.
It won't work.
Okay, I agree, but I wanted to lay it
No,
out there.
that works.
Okay.
And, just cover your ears, you're not gonna like this. The bonding piece of what we're talking about, that is a piece of which we're gonna have to, I think as a Board of Finance, help the CIP to understand how we want that to be handled within the CIP. So that's another piece that I think we should discuss as a board in putting together a bonding package and how we.
At what point do we have a budget strategy with the Board of Selectmen and the Board of Ed about how the bonding package would fall into the upcoming 10 years budgets?
So it was my hope that in the strategic plan, that was gonna happen.
And?
I have not been told of anything. I think we can call a meeting to try to have that.
I think someone has to, it can't not be discussed.
Well, we said we would once the numbers came in, and the Board of Ed had acted. And I think it's to us to reconvene the tri-board
Yeah.
and see if we have a consensus about what's going to move forward to the CIP.
So, Bennett, would you recommend something in October then to, since,
Well, I think it has to be early October because the board.
Well, we won't have the package till the 15th.
Yeah, so my plan was, and you all can correct me or change my path, after last night, you know, I have cash flows as far as when the Board of Ed's proposal, the cash flow needs are. I have drawdowns on bonds, bands, and notes, short-term notes and bonds over the next 5 years as far as where the debt service stands. So my
Impact
plan
of the mill
was,
rate and all that stuff.
correct,
Yeah.
I have run all of those numbers. I actually handed Jean a piece of paper today with those numbers on there. But when the CIP document comes out on October 15th, in those numbers is going to include not only the pay-as-you-go CIP plan, it's going to include the debt service for the Board of Ed's recommendation of the $84.9 million referendum, as well as the 13.9 for Academy. It will all be in there, so when it moves to CIP, they will be able to see what the total annual debt service plus pay-as-you-go will be. So it will all be in that document. It will move forward to the CIP, which has 2 board members of Board of Finance, Board of Selectmen, Board of Ed, be on the CIP, and then that will be discussed through February 1st, and then move forward again to the Board of Selectmen and Board of Finance. That was my plan, unless you tell me otherwise.
Our current debt limitations by regulation doesn't
Yes.
get us to those 2 numbers that you put out there, correct?
Yes, everything is included. It
No, but we cannot take out that much debt
Our
currently.
current regulation, under our current regulation, yes, we can.
We can't.
Yes, we can. Because the regulation says it's 10% of our of our total budget, including debt service. So as the debt service goes up, so does the regulation number. That's the way the regulation is written currently. So yes, there is, and Jean, you have, I only made 1 copy, but I could forward it to you all.
Yeah, if you could.
It went out to the
The
Board
89
of,
plus the 13 together?
yep.
Okay.
So the only difference is when we set this thing in motion, we agreed and announced publicly that we would reconvene, before it went to the CIP, we would reconvene the tri-board and ensure that, to the best we could, that we had the support of all 3 boards for the package that would go to the CIP. That we didn't want.
So, yeah, so my is not so much the package. I want to just make sure that all of these committees who have done this work are all represented, and I think it sounds like they are. You know, that's my biggest thing is, and I think it's most board members, the public has to know everything. So my biggest concern is that this is not, you know, this is not people going out on their, you know, Board of Ed over here, Academy over here, Surf Club, which hasn't even been talked about, which needs to be talked about.
It's in the strategic plan.
So, moving forward, those are the kinds of things. For my concern is that everything is talked about publicly, that people have a clear understanding of what all these projects are going to cost. And those are the numbers that you've run for the Board of Ed. To me, that's a key element. We have seen Academy, and I'm assuming that those numbers were blessed by you, for lack of a better word. Have you looked at theirs? Do you feel you need more time with that?
I have not in detail looked at their cash flows. I obtained the cash flows, I think, last week, or the week before, from Colliers, and that will be brought into the total numbers. So last night, we did not talk any cash flows, what our annual debt service would be, what the tax impact would be. That was my plan to pull in last night, as well as Academy, which I just got today, I believe, and pull that all into CIP, so CIP can see what the annual impact would be on our budget. And that was my plan. If you tell
Operating?
total budget, So total budget would include operating,
Yeah.
capital pay-as-you-go,
Okay.
as well as debt service.
Yeah, and in that operating, right, you're not gonna use the full 100% $2 million occupancy number that they had in there.
No, in the operating, I'm sorry, in the CIP will not include the operating. It will include the debt service and the pay-as-you-go for the CIP. And that was my plan, to pull that all together for October 15th to be sent to the CIP committee. If Bennett, if you're saying that the tri-board needs to reconvene before it goes, then we need to do that really, really soon before I send all of this to the CIP
Well, but
committee.
before you send it, but after you put the numbers together, it does seem to me.
Right, without the numbers, it seems silly.
Yeah, but so if we do it on the 14th or the 16th or whatever, you know, but I think convening the tri-board, putting those numbers out publicly, talking again about the process, there's tremendous confusion about what the process is moving forward, even though we've tried to lay it out. It's complex for people, and it's been a long time, and so there might be some value in almost using this as a send-off to the CIP.
So, and I think that's the difference for me. You use the word get the blessing or endorsement, and I apologize, I don't remember which word you used, from all the boards. I'm not looking to bless it, I'm looking to make sure the public is fully informed as many times as we can do it on what the reality is. That's all I want. So I'm not looking to say, I endorse this, I endorse that, I endorse that. I'm looking to say, do we have the capacity for it with our debt right now with our policy? Yes,
Can we afford
we
it?
do. So moving forward, we have it. So to me, it's a matter of continual dialogue in the public's eye. It is important that the boards get together so we are all on the same page. That I very much agree with, because I think we committed to the public to say we were not going to, drop the hammer, at different times. We were going to say this is the total ask that's going to CIP, and that's what I would like. And people have done a lot of work, and they have a right, in my opinion, to make sure that what they're saying, and that's why I think with Academy coming tonight, people have the right to have that public space in order to make sure that they're being represented correctly. And for our sake, we make sure the numbers are realistic.
Manageable.
Well, I mean realistic in the sense that when somebody says this is the offset for that, I gotta know that that's true. I mean, because we all hope it's true, but I don't, it's like grants. I love the fact that they have explored all these grants. And to Bill's point, I was on the phone with him and he was very clear. I can't guarantee you that. I'm just telling you this is what we can go after. So we always have to assume, and we did it with the Board of Ed, we have to assume we're not gonna get anything and that we have to be able to carry that. So those are the kinds of conversations that I wanna have publicly.
And just like the 84-9, that
Right.
does not include any reimbursement from the state. We're assuming worst case scenario, we don't know what's gonna happen with the state.
Right.
But my plan right now is, again, to pull together the pay-as-you-go, the academy, the school facilities, debt service, and show you what the annual capital pay-as-you-go and the annual debt service will look like before we get into the operating budget, because the operating budget is a whole nother animal. Who knows what health insurance is gonna come up with, who knows what negotiations are for, salaries. Like, that's when we have to pull everything together. But as of right now, what my plan is for CIP is to pull all the capital pieces together, including debt and including this pay-as-you-go.
Thoughts?
In that case, I don't think it's essential that we do it before the 15th. We can do it after.
Yeah, it's
But
not
we
gonna
should do-
change.
We should do it in October, though. We should definitely
Agreed.
do it
Yeah,
in October.
that'd be great.
I think that's important that people understand it. I'd like to understand, I'd like to maybe have it after our October board meeting, because I'd like to have a discussion with you about the pay-as-you-go CIP. The numbers I've heard from the Board of Ed are huge. The 84 million, whatever it is, envisions, another 40 million?
44.
44 million
Over the
going
next
through the
10
CIP.
years.
Huh?
Over the next 10 years.
Okay.
And I can tell you, year
On top of the
one,
90?
yes, But year one is 415,000, and
Because you have to-
normally we focus on the year one because we know that we cannot,
I understand, but in this case, we have to look.
absolutely,
Yeah,
but it's,
because
You
remember,
have to remember, there was $100 million capital maintenance plan to begin with.
Yeah, I know, I
And
never
so
bought
by-
all that anyway.
so they peeled off chunks of that, but
Yeah.
what remains is going into the CIP. We call it pay-as-you-go. It may wind
Well,
up
nice
being
to have
of
in
bonded,
course,
there.
of
right?
course.
And I think so we have to be clear about that. I'm nervous, Gene, you talk about transparency. This
Yeah.
is so complex.
Yes.
People could
I
get the
agree.
impression that the 84
Means
is,
it's done.
you know, one and
Yeah,
done.
right.
But it's not, because there's this ongoing maintenance thing that kicks in, and that at appropriate points, I assume, could mean layering in.
Initiate another bond.
Addition, exactly.
of course.
But we know that, but who else does?
Okay, so when I pull the CIP document together,
Mhm.
it will show the 84.9 for the bonding that will happen in May, and then it will have the 5 years of that 10-year,
Might-
44
Might
million.
happen in May, not will.
That will go to, that could happen in May, the referendum, and then it will show the 5 years of the 10-year, 44 million plan. And then in the first year, I recall it was 415, and then the following years 2 through 5 were higher numbers, much higher numbers. Those would probably, most likely be offset with additional bond issuances. We put 3 million into CIP every year. We cannot absorb,
Thank you, yeah.
yes, we
And
cannot
can I
absorb
just say,
more
I know it's a
pay-as-you-go.
5-year plan, but theirs is a 10-year.
Absolutely.
For the sake of transparency, I think there needs to at least be an
We
attachment.
should run it out for 20 years.
It's all in there. The plan is included in the document will be the 84.9 planned referendum, the 5 years of the 44 million, the whole 44 million will be in the document. If the May referendum does not pass, the 98 million original 10-year maintenance plan will also be in the document, because we know that's not going away.
Right.
If Plan A does not happen, there's always Plan B that we're still stuck with. So all of that is gonna be included in the document to come out on October 15th.
Good
We have our
luck.
work cut out for us, Kristen.
That's true.
But that was our plan unless,
No, I like it.
okay.
Good?
Yep.
All righty. Review 2021 budget process.
Okay, so the only thing I have right now is a draft budget calendar for 2021. It's similar to last year. Lauren went in and updated the dates. I can tell you one big change from last year. I don't know how many I
I'm
have.
so delighted to pass this over
Oh, Bennett.
I'm sorry.
The light, is that the word you use, Bennett?
That's the word I
You can take a short time.
You're not gonna wake up,
If I need it, I'll borrow it.
in
So
the
please
November
look
Board of
at
Finance
it.
meeting and just feel a little bit,
I may show up at a budget workshop.
So this is what I'm gonna request, because we seemed, when we get into the budget, everyone's like, I didn't know we had a meeting, and how come we didn't see this, and how come we didn't see that? So I am begging you publicly, you have got to look at this calendar, and you have got to put it in your calendars, and if there's anything that you cannot do, just let us know so we can take care of it sooner rather than later.
Are you talking to us?
Yes.
There's no way, there is absolutely no way I can tell you now to be available.
Listen to me, listen to me, there are certain things
March
you
12th.
can, put it on your calendar, and if somebody says, I wanna go to dinner on March 18th, you can't.
Believe me, I'm not missing.
So if you, the other thing that I want people to,
Dinner.
I'm ignoring you. The other thing I want you to look at is the way in which we have set things up. If there are people that you want to see, the ambulance is coming in. They did not come to this meeting, but they are going to come in. If there are people or groups that you want to see, you are always able to, we can bring them to our meetings, or we are always able to go to when the selectmen bring them in to review. That didn't go so well when we tried to do it together, so I'm not suggesting we do that again. I'm just suggesting that you keep in mind that there are other opportunities, and we can always ask people to come.
Yes, so 2 years ago, we tried to combine all of our meetings, that didn't work.
No.
So then last year, we broke it apart again, however, we still had that long day during the week, I think it was a Thursday and then a Saturday. And that kind of didn't work as well.
Right.
So what we tried, based on our notes, all of us put our minds together and said, why don't we just try one long day, one long Thursday, have all the departments, have the outside departments come in later in the afternoon, since town staff actually works till 6:30.
Can we do it on the weekends? Two long Saturdays?
You want a Sunday too?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I think the problem,
Christmas.
I can't
We
take
could do
off.
Christmas
I
if
can't
you
take
want.
off a day of work.
so that's the next piece of this.
If you're
we-
serious, yeah.
If people are serious, I'd
Yeah, I'm
rather know
serious.
now. If there's no way that we're gonna be
Yeah,
able
you
to
can
do
take
it
off.
during the day, that's absolutely fine. But just, that's the point that I'm making. We need to have that conversation now.
I don't think it's realistic.
That's fine. So
During the
that's
day?
good. So it's fair
That's
that
fine.
you say that. So if that's the case, we will not do any day meetings. And I mean it. I don't want to have the day meeting and none of us come. So I think if we know up front that people are not, that's not an option, then we'll have to go to evenings or weekends.
Yeah, we could do a full day Saturday, that's totally.
I mean, I guess just my 2 cents is that I feel like when we go through these marathon sessions, it becomes very difficult to really get to the crux of anything, and it's like speed dating, and you go through it, and your head's spinning by the time you're done, and then you don't learn as much as maybe you probably should. So I would just suggest, and again, I recognize that when we talk about doing things on the evenings or on weekends, you're talking about bringing in staff, that work for the town, and that's a challenge for them. But I personally would prefer weeknights, and doing it in tranches of like 2 hour, 2 hour, 2 hour, and then we can give each of these boards more time to discuss, and so we can better understand the challenges they all face. And then when it comes to constructing and approving or finally getting that budget completed, we have a better understanding, and there aren't surprises. And I really, because I love what Youth Services does when they come in here. It's fantastic. They come here, they let us know what's going on, they give us an idea about what is kind of down the pike, and they don't just show up when they need money or they need something. So
Are a week
So
of
if
weeknights
that's-
available?
So I guess that becomes the question.
Sure.
If we can do weeknights, if there's a way in which we can use board meeting time, we'll keep the nights of the meetings, keep the agendas very light, and then work around that. So what is a start time that
Yeah.
people can?
6,
Is
So
6
6 to 8?
6 to 8 or 9?
Does that work?
If you want to put more time, I'll do a 3-hour window, I'm okay with that.
Well, I think to go back to Kevin's point, do we want that, is that just a speed dating?
yeah, I mean, I would say like if we could do it like if we could do it in
6
2
to
hour
8.
increments, and it's like a half hour for each department, and we can prioritize the departments that we know that have larger budgets, and I think so we can prioritize down, so it's just not like, certain departments are not necessarily on equal footing as far as
But they just
budgetary
don't
needs.
need, right, they
So
don't.
prioritize based
Some
on,
need more time than others.
yeah.
So Stacy, could I ask you to go back with this? And can you look at doing it in the evenings from 6 to 8? And just see how many evenings we would need and then make suggestions that way?
And then
That-
based on the individual departments, you want me to make an estimate, like the tax collector, maybe 15 minutes, but the ambulance, you want a half
4
an
days.
hour?
Yeah.
Okay,
Library.
yeah, the library, half an hour or whatever, okay.
Yeah, because I think that's one of the things that,
Police.
we hear, I know when we're, in and
Yeah.
out of town is, just for us to all be more informed and to make sure we're getting that information out to the public.
Perfect. And I
Okay.
appreciate, that's what we were looking for,
No,
because I think
yeah.
that's perfect.
Great, and do
Now
you
we
want
know.
to do combined with the Board of Selectmen and Board of Finance? For these meetings, so that the ambulance does not have to come once to the Board of Selectmen and then once to the Board of Finance? I don't,
Yeah.
what,
I'm gonna say it didn't work well the last time.
okay,
We are two independent bodies.
okay. We can certainly try, I'll talk to Lauren and maybe she can help us. put
Because I think the
something-
selectmen can do it during the day, correct? I mean, they seem to be having day meetings.
depends on, yeah, we can try. I'll talk to the selectman's office.
I think the key is we're having this conversation now and not on a Wednesday when the meeting's on Thursday and we can't get a quorum. So I think it's good we're having this conversation. So let's play this out. Let's see what it looks like and then we'll reconvene. We have time. We'll talk about it again.
Okay,
Okay?
yes.
While we're doing schedule,
Oh, Bennett.
I have a matter of personal privilege I'd like to raise.
All right.
I have to be,
Wait, hold on one second.
Go ahead.
no, please finish.
I just had, you had brought up the ambulance,
Mhm.
and I know, maybe not, this isn't the time to bring it up, but I know that there were some action items that we had set on the heels of the last budget.
Right,
And I
they're
don't-
coming in.
But no, there were some specific actions, weren't there? I don't remember.
Well, we
what they
agreed to
all
it at the
were.
time, and I've reached out to the Board of Selectmen on multiple occasions. I spoke to probably every member of the Board of Selectmen at one point or another over the summer. There was an expectation that we set with this board in probably around that January, February timeframe, that when the ambulance came to us and they had a request of 160,000, we cut it from 160 to 110 with the caveat that we need to understand their operations better, and we're not here to tell them how to run their business, but the concern was the sustainability
Yes.
issue, and whether or not this is going to be.
Yeah.
Right, they were gonna
And
get a
so
consultant,
what we
right?
agreed on was that we would start with just a workshop, and, so we can identify what the issues and concerns are, and then we could, by the time we get to the budget season,
Right.
have a clear path.
So two,
I-
right, so two
But I
things
think
that
wasn't
they
there a letter
are,
that
they,
we
we
asked-
scheduled them
We
to
did.
come, so they are gonna come and bring that, because we did ask for that. Stacy has also been working with them and been getting their financials, which had never happened before. They are doing, from my understanding, better
Yes.
than they have in past years. So that's the piece that we will get
Yes.
before they come to our next meeting.
I heard.
So I think we will be, that's exactly the
Okay,
plan.
okay.
And they were gonna come tonight, but with having Youth and Family Services and having, the academy people, it just was too much in
Yeah.
one night.
But I thought that there was a specific action item that the Board of Selectmen had to request a consultant to
Yes,
come in.
yes, they
and pro-
agreed to hire a consultant who could not
Has
just
that been
look at
done?
not just look at their current business model, but could give us comparables from around the country.
Exactly.
I do not believe that has happened.
All right, so we would like that to happen.
We made that request.
Yeah.
But
They
I mean,
agreed to it.
I would like
It
to
wasn't
follow up
binding.
on that
They agreed
request.
to it?
The selectmen agreed to it.
They did?
I don't, did he? I don't remember exactly.
I don't
know
remember.
about
I do, I
the-
remember discussing.
He was here, I think.
We clarified that it wasn't just to examine their finances. It
Right.
was to give us a context in which to evaluate
Correct,
their
yeah.
service model.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So let's do
Because
this.
we're talking about the 2 guys per truck, and that
Right.
changed, and
And I think they have made some changes to that. I think that's why the savings is there, because I think they have changed their scheduling.
Yeah.
So this is my thought. We're gonna bring them in as scheduled to do all of this review. I will send an email to the selectmen saying it is our recollection that we had a conversation that you were going to hire a consultant to come in and do a review. And we'll see where that goes. So we'll
Okay.
do both
Okay.
things, but we will continue down the path of what we know to be true. And I think the scheduling piece of it was huge. And that's the piece they have, to a certain extent, have made some changes to.
So you want them to come into your next meeting?
Yeah, I
as
think
well?
they're scheduled too. Go
I
ahead.
don't know, I thought they were
Right.
tentatively coming to this meeting, and
Right.
then, you're right, it was too much.
Right.
So you want them to the next meeting, and then you're gonna send an email
I'll
to the
send an email
selectmen
to the selectmen.
saying what is the status of reviewing their operational model?
Correct, that it's our understanding that you were gonna hire a consultant. And we'll
To
see.
review their operational model.
Correct.
Just want to reiterate that First Selectman was here, and I specifically asked him if he would let us review the RFP before it went out. Because
I remember
was really
that.
concerned about the scope.
yeah.
So-
Okay.
Okay.
So we'll do that.
Perfect.
I'll get that, but we will have them come in. We'll look at their financials. Stacy, you can give us an update at the next meeting on what they've given you.
Yeah,
And perhaps
I
you
can
could
forward it to you all.
Maybe you
Yep,
could forward
yep,
it before the meeting so we have time to review it before we're actually sitting here.
Yep.
Is that fair to everybody?
Yes, I think so.
So when you're talking about other of these departments coming in, you've got the ambulance coming in and the library, maybe? Do you have the library coming in, or no?
I think they said that they were gonna be coming in
I
and give
think
us an update on the construction, right?
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. There's one area that I wonder if anyone else has an interest in hearing from. But, for example, Beach and Rec, they seem to do so many different things in town, and their budget covers so many different areas. Would anybody else be interested in having them come in to talk a little bit about how they're organized, how they spend their money?
Absolutely.
Okay.
I think it's absolutely a issue in the front burner departments.
Outside of the budget process, like prior
Yes.
to?
Yeah, so that by the time we get to the budget, we have
It
a
worked
better idea
well
what
with
they're
Youth
saying.
and Family
I know.
Services. It
It
worked
worked so
well.
good with them.
It really made that last conversation
Okay.
less.
So ambulance, library, beach and rec.
Yep.
Got it.
Fair?
Yep.
Anybody else? Thoughts, questions, comments?
Yeah, I had a scheduling problem. Our next meeting is Wednesday, the 16th. I have to be out of state, the 16th.
I think we didn't have a quorum. I thought we were.
We canceled that.
Canceled that,
Well,
yeah.
why would we cancel it?
We don't have a quorum.
Can we reschedule?
Well, I think when we start to look at people's schedules, it's a very light agenda.
We tried to move everything to this agenda
So
so
that-
that we would be okay for the October, before November, but.
It doesn't have a last meeting in October?
Well, should we at least then try to schedule, can we try to schedule the tri-board?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, that would be great. I mean, yeah, at a minimum, at least, and we can give you the send-off you deserve back.
I don't want to send off,
Yes.
I just don't want to miss my last
No,
board
of
meeting.
course, of course,
That would be,
of course.
So if we look at
I can do that Tuesday, or I can do the following week.
October, what's
Tuesday,
the
what,
week?
what day?
October 15th.
I can't do that.
15th doesn't work for me, the following week's better.
The week of the 21st?
That's good.
You want to do the Wednesday, like 6 o'clock or whatever,
I'm okay with that.
for the tri-board? I don't care when, I just,
Can you make that, Steve?
So we will send an invitation out for that day. Is everyone in agreement in the evening, 7 o'clock?
What day is
So
it,
for
sorry?
the.
The 23rd for
Oh.
a tri-board.
If
So
we could
it's
do
gonna
it,
be
if we could do,
That's fine.
if we
It's
could do it
gonna
a
be
little,
a Board of
Finance
Finance
meeting,
meeting.
inviting the other two boards.
Correct.
Yeah.
before we lock in the date, though, Stacy should check the Board of Ed schedule, God knows what they have.
That's a good point.
On the 23rd at night, their meetings are normally on Tuesdays. That Tuesday, they have the facilities. And then the Board of Ed meetings the week before,
No committee meetings?
facilities.
But
On the
that's-
22nd, nothing on
Oh,
the 23rd.
so how about 23rd is good?
Mhm.
Okay, what
then
time?
I don't know, is it an issue to do it an hour earlier at 6?
No?
No, because it's a special meeting. We can
So
do it
why don't we
at
do
any
that,
time.
then we can maybe go up afterwards for a couple.
Good idea. There you go.
Is
Good?
that all right?
Sure.
All right,
Kenny's buying.
I'll buy.
No, only if I board.
Gene, I just have one question I wanted to
Yes.
table. And I know this has been a very long meeting, so I'm not looking to continue to lengthen this meeting, but I do have a question as it relates to Board of Selectmen agenda for Monday. So really the agenda item, it was number 10 on the Board of Selectmen's agenda, and it was to discuss solar carports, RFP, and take action on next steps. So I was going to ask Tom this question, but I guess I'll direct it to you in his absence, Stacy, because it is a financial question that I have. And I'm not expecting you necessarily to give me the full answer today, but this is my concern. So my question relates specifically to process and procedures as it relates to these types of, I'm going to call them complex financial transactions, and why these solar transactions are not and have never been presented to the Board of Finance and approved by the Board of Finance. So I just don't understand how we can be signing off on these significant projects without it coming to this board.
I guess because there's no additional cost that the Board of Finance would absorb.
What do you mean when you say that? There's no,
Because there's savings within our.
but there's a value,
utility.
this is a value.
There is a value, and honestly, I mean, we can certainly talk about it and maybe even get an opinion on it, but we've
Yeah.
never done it before because we've never actually had to spend any additional costs within a given budget.
But are you encumbering the town for a number of future years with responsibilities?
A future commitment
Yes.
out of our utility bills, yes.
Well,
So then it's-
it's a financial.
Transaction
well,
that
It's a financial
extends,
transaction
yes.
that is not necessarily a guaranteed return, so there is a bit of a risk component of that. But again, I'm not getting into the merits of the deal necessarily. It's really more about that this is it's a significant financial investment for the town. We're going to be building significant infrastructure. At the end of this lease, assuming it's 20 years, we're going to own that. What is the cost? There's a lot of this question. So I guess my concern is that any other significant investment in this town comes through this board. And just because there may not be a direct outlay, there's absolutely an indirect cost to this town. And I feel like it's the responsibility of the Board of Finance to at least, well, at a minimum, at least be presented what this deal is. And then, but I firmly believe that we should be approving these deals.
I think there's another aspect too.
Couldn't agree more.
Yeah, there's still a competitive issue with regard to the degree of benefit, even though we don't lay out money, right? Different vendors might offer more attractive or less attractive deals to the town.
Absolutely.
But that's, that process goes through the selectmen.
But I guess my-
as far as.
Yeah,
As
I
far
just
as
want to say that my concern is this,
decide on. I
nobody's
understand what you're
nobody's
saying.
coming here and saying, I'm going to build this for free
Right.
and give you cheap electricity at the same time. We are transferring, we're giving them value back. There is it's an economic transaction. And listen, I mean, when our bylaws were created, and I think Tom mentioned that he's going to be doing a review of that, this should absolutely be part of the charter review, because this technology didn't exist probably when the charter was even developed and created. So it's just something that it's important.
So, and I think the charter review is years down the line, but Stacy, is there a way that we could have that conversation now with the selectmen? Because I think it's something, yeah, I agree with you. Our charter is not, it's not good. And it was written at a time where the issues we're dealing with now didn't exist. And it was poorly written, no offense to anyone, but it was poorly written. So I would like to have that, I know it's going to be a discussion amongst the charter people, review committee, but I would also like to have that discussion earlier so that we can get to some kind of agreement that there is some kind of presentation when there's that much of when there's a large project that will have future costs. And impact this town. I do agree that we should have that in front of us, and I think it's too long to wait for the charter. I think that has to be an early
Even if it's not cost, even if it's savings.
Correct.
It's still-
Yeah.
I also think there's an issue of public transparency.
Sure.
These are significant,
What will be the effect of these structures on the town's
Well, that becomes-
insurance program?
Correct, and
We don't
once
know.
we own them,
What's the
what
liability?
happens
We
then?
don't know.
Yeah.
What happens if something happens to them in a storm or
Right,
something
correct.
like that? Who's responsible for the repair, the maintenance,
If
the
it
upkeep?
reduces the operating budget by how much, you give how much money do you have to spend?
And I think we're always looking to future budget
A lot of unanswered
forecasting and
questions.
things that
Yes.
will affect
Will
that.
impact the future year.
That we need to address that sooner or later, so that's good. Any,
Committee report?
thank you, committee reports. I feel like I'm on the Board of Ed again this year.
So can I say for
Board
the
of
first
Finance supposed to be
selectman,
quick, go
he
ahead.
wasn't feeling well.
Oh, is that why he
had a
left?
fever, he had to leave. So I just
Because it's
wanted to let you know.
100 degrees in here.
It is 100 degrees.
Like
It's 102.
literally, it
You
is.
can't blame it on me, Gene.
I
No,
have nothing more to say, so I'm done.
Yeah,
good?
you still got comments.
Yeah, we're good.
Oh,
Make it
Have
quick,
have mercy,
make
Gus.
it quick.
wait, we're doing our financials, hold on, we gotta review our financials.
Start off.
We're just gonna, let us review our
Bookending
financials.
this now.
Candy would like to take you out for a drink to discuss it.
I'll pay for it.
You pay for it. I'll drive, drop you off.
They just haven't
You
changed.
realize at 10 o'clock,
I just
I
wanted to
turned
give you
into
an
a...
I know. So wait, let's do the
So do I.
financials and then,
Then we can shut it down.
and then we can get it.
You turn into a werewolf.
No discussion, I just wanted to share the same
Okay.
information I have. The auditors are currently out, no discussion, the auditors are currently out. This is the second week, so they're driving us all nuts. And we started the implementation training with Munis, which is a year-long process.
And how's it going so far?
It's extremely painful and time-consuming
Good.
and head-spinning,
Excellent.
overwhelming.
Good.
But yes, we're doing it. We're doing something that normally takes 18 to 24 months within the next 9 months, because our current system is going, not offline, but the support is ceasing to exist July 1st.
Okay.
So it's been intense.
Any questions on the financials? They're the same pretty much.
Please, no.
What do you, anything, Kevin?
Insurance reserve?
It's there. It's the second page.
Right, got it.
Fine.
Good? Good. Liaison reports, first selectman report. Citizens' comments.
Two things. Item number 9 says discuss and take action to approve a special appropriation. Up until the early 1990s, we used to carry approximately 1% of the operating budget in a contingency fund. And back in those days, it would have read, discuss and take action to approve a transfer from the contingency fund. Once in the mid-late 1990s, we got a very large unassigned fund balance. In those days, it was called undesignated. They changed the name. It became the cookie jar. Second thing, CIP. Don't worry about CIP. There are 3 public members on the CIP committee. Guess who one of them is? Don't worry about that. And the last thing is I make a motion to adjourn.
Second that one.
All in favor?
All right.
We out.
First
Yes, sir.
citizen motion.